Would the city secretary please call the roll?
Mitchell.
Here.
Tobias.
Present.
Heiser.
Here.
Flores-Kale.
Here.
Zuniga.
Here.
Bradshaw.
Here.
Parsley.
Here.
All right. All members are present. Next up, citizen comments period. At this time, we ask anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on any item to please do so. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and that you direct those comments to the mayor and council. Does anybody wish to come forward and speak? Seeing none, I'm going to close citizen comments. It's now closed. Next up, executive session. I think Councilmember Zuniga gets the short end of this one.
I don't have this part. Okay. Pursuant to Chapter 551, Texas Government Code, the City Council reserves the right to convene into executive session from time to time as deemed necessary during this meeting. The City Council may convene into executive session pursuant to any lawful exception contained in Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, including any or all of the following topics: pending or contemplated litigation, settlement agreement, or to seek the advice of the city attorney and attorneys concerning legal issues pursuant to Section 551071 Texas Government Code and Section 1.05 Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct, Attorney General Inquiry, TIRZ number 4, and the Limestone Creek Project sign ordinance, possible purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate pursuant to Section 551.072 to deliberate the purchase of real property for public purpose, purchase of property for city facilities and public purposes, TIRZ number 4, and the Limestone Creek Project, personal matters pursuant to Section 551.074, convene into executive session pursuant to Section 551.087 Texas Government Code to deliberate regarding the offer of economic incentives to one or more business prospects that the city seeks to have locate, stay, or expand in or near the city. Project Patrick Swayze, Project Facelift, Project Hot Pursuit. Take action on items discussed in executive session.
Session. There will be no action taken now. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, we are adjourned. All right, good evening, everyone. The time is 7:04 p.m. It is Tuesday, January the 20th, and I'm going to call this regularly scheduled City Council meeting to order. Would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the city secretary please call the roll?
Mitchell.
Here.
Tobias.
Present.
Heiser.
Here.
Flores-Kale.
Here.
Zuniga.
Here.
Bradshaw.
Here.
Parsley.
Here.
All right, all members present. We have a quorum. Next up, approval of the minutes.
Mayor, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes for city council minutes for May 16th and also June the 6th, including the special meeting on June the 6th as well.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Councilmember Ashley, Councilmember Bradshaw, that we approve the minutes, agenda items 1 through 3. Is there a discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. All right, motion carries 7-0. Next up is citizen comments period. At this time, we ask anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak to please do so. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and that you direct those comments to the mayor and council. We also ask that you fill out a citizen comments form and submit that to either myself or the city secretary. I have one registered to speak, Domingo Castilla.
My comments today has to do with the forthcoming election, November 7th. As some of you have already announced your candidacy for some of the city council positions, may I recommend that a free open forum be utilized for meeting all candidates. The forum should be similar to the process used by the City Hall to meet the prospective candidates for the city manager's position. I know that social media is one of the major mediums being used today, but I believe face-to-face type of communications between candidates and voters is the most effective means of communications. Using this method, the voters can gain a better understanding of the candidates in respect to the following: how they have met or plan to meet the needs of the citizens they represent, the candidates' interpersonal communication skills, their educational background, their ability to make decisions in a rapid expanding economy. Colorado is growing at a demanding pace. We must be prepared to meet the economic, financial, and environmental demands of the future. We can do so with the most qualified personnel, and that can be performed by having this open forum. And as you know, we used the same thing for the city manager position, and we did very good, didn't we? Thank you.
Thank you. That is all the forms that I have. Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward and speak? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close citizen comments. I'm going to take some privilege now and recognize Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I'll be just real brief. The last meeting we had, it was very chaotic. We were in a rush to get this, but I just wanted to let the audience know and city know we started a new chapter in our city, and I wanted to formally introduce our new city manager, Mr. Bryan Langley. We came from the city of Burleson. We wanted to say welcome, and last meeting was your first meeting, and of course, like I said, wish I should have known to just recognize, but I just want to say welcome to the city. We're very happy that you're here. We're very excited for your vision and your direction and leadership that you're going to give for our city. I wanted to say welcome to you. And I also wanted to say to Jerry Hendricks, sir, thank you so much for your leadership and your expertise during the time when we were looking for our new city manager. So I wanted to thank you and your staff for all the hard work you did. And again, Mr. Langley, welcome to the city of Kyle.
All right, next up is agenda item number 4, agenda order. Is there anyone who wishes to request any of these items to be reordered? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to agenda item number 5, Juneteenth Proclamation. Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, thank you very much. Again, it's always an honor to do these. So last night when I was going over the agenda, I happened to have the TV on and we're watching CNN, and they had a huge celebration on the TV of concerts across the country. My daughter came downstairs and she goes, "Dad, ooh, is that a concert?" I said, "No, honey, it's a Juneteenth celebration. Look, they're in Los Angeles, they're in New York, they're in Washington." So I gave her a little brief history of what it was, and she says, "Wow, that's cool." And then she saw one of her favorite female artists during the song and stuff, and she was kind of dancing. I didn't know who it was because I still listen to Prince, and so I didn't know who it was. But I just kind of wanted to, if you don't mind, take a page out of the Peace and Progress program that I attended last Friday, which was very, very good. We had some really good conversations. We had a great panel there. And so real briefly, I want to ask this question to the audience. And this is, again, from one of the questions there. The word freedom has been used by so many to symbolize Juneteenth. So I want to ask the audience, just for yourself, what word would you symbolize Juneteenth? Just think about it for a minute. The word freedom, what word would you utilize as Juneteenth? Some of the responses that were for Minting, with the Minting program, was emancipation. Words were truth, undervalued, overlooked, awareness, unchained, and one of the responses was finally. Observing holidays such as Juneteenth, MLK Day on a national level is very important for all of us and our country and those who celebrate, because it truly impasses an inclusive spirit and affords the opportunity to educate, bring awareness to those who want to learn more about the true history of these significant holidays. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important, really very important, that we continue to engage in conversations, to speak up to the hard and sometimes very uncomfortable truths. Support members in our communities, understand the struggles, the challenges, yet embrace their differences, the values and beliefs, while at the same time We are celebrating their accomplishments and their goals. That is how we move forward, City of Kyle. That is how we move forward, my friends. That is how we respect each other. That is how we teach the next generation, like my daughter yesterday, the importance of the holidays like Juneteenth. So I'd like to go ahead and read the proclamation. Whereas Juneteenth, also known as Freedom or Emancipation Day, celebrates the 157th anniversary this year. Juneteenth is a holiday that commemorates the announcement of the abolishment of slavery to Texas in June of 1865. This occurred 901 days after the Emancipation Proclamation was issued by President Abraham Lincoln. And whereas the following, I need to use my glasses here, was read in Galveston, Texas on June 19, 1865 by General Gordon Granger. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States that all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection of the hereto of existing between them becomes between the employer and the hired labor. The freemen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts, and they will not be supported in idleness, neither there or anywhere. And whereas Juneteenth commemorates African American freedom and emphasizes education and achievement, it is a day, a week, and in some areas a month marked with celebrations, guest speakers, picnics, and of course family gatherings. It is a time for reflection and rejoicing. It is a time for assessment, self-improvement, and for planning for the future. In cities across the country, people of all races, nationalities, and religions are joining hands to truthfully acknowledge a period in our history that shaped and continued to influence our society as it is today. Sensitized to conditions and experience of others, only then we can make significant and lasting improvements in our society. And whereas, in the words of former Texas Representative Al Edwards, who authored House Bill 1016, making Texas the first state with Juneteenth as an official state holiday. Every year, we must remind successful generations that this is an event triggered as a series of events that one by one defines the challenges and responsibilities of successive generations. That's why we need this holiday. And whereas 2 days after passing the House Representatives by a large majority on the 17th day of June 2021, President Joe Biden signed a unanimous bipartisan effort of the Senate chamber creating the Juneteenth a National Independence Day Act. And therefore, it be proclaimed by the City of Kyle that the 19th day of June shall be celebrated as Juneteenth or Emancipation Day in recognition of Jubilee Day and the spirit of Juneteenth that celebrates African American freedom, education, and achievement while encouraging continuous self-development and respect for all cultures. Sign on this day. Again, I appreciate everybody's support. Last Friday, it was great conversations when I attended there, and it was very, very meaningful for me to continue to hear some of the conversations that we have that's related to our cities and across our country, and in the education, also from the education standpoint level and so forth. So I have hope, this was another word, hope, that we will continue to move forward as a society and respect each other. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add to that? If not, we will love to invite anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward for a photograph commemorating Juneteenth and this proclamation to do so, and we'll take that photograph now. Thank you.
All right, on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
No, that's okay. Like bags over here.
All right. Next up is agenda item number 6, receive a report and hold a discussion regarding library board activities. Ms. Tierney.
I have Mary Landrum, our vice chair here for, to give the library board report.
Thank you. Thank you, Colleen. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Mary Landrum. I serve as Vice Chair for the Library Board. I am here to provide a quick update from the board, but before doing so, I also like to recognize Jessica Robinson, who serves as Secretary for the board. Okay. So to start off the mission, and some of this I'm going to read because I want to make sure that I get this correct. So the mission statement for the library board, as you see on the screen, is to serve the community as a resource for informational, educational, recreational, and cultural enrichment. These services are provided for patrons of all ages and backgrounds to support literacy and knowledge. The City Council members tasked the library board with advising you and Ms. Tierney, who is the director of the Chi Library, advising as well as providing recommendations for the proper regulation and administration of the library. Next. Okay, thanks. To carry out the task, the library board meets with Ms. Tierney on a monthly basis in public meetings to educate the public on current direction the library is taking and discuss recommendations for proper administration of the library. So as you can see by this slide, here's the list of the 7 board members and their appointed terms. In part, the reason that we have this, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. Is to show you that there are 4 new members, including myself, that were appointed by this city council this past year. Ms. Tierney was also hired this last year and has been in this role for about 7 months. Given the number of new members and our new director, the board focused its attention on developing an orientation packet to successfully onboard members. Ms. Harold, who is not here tonight, but she is one of our members, took the lead on this task and did a wonderful job. If you are interested, we can provide you with a copy. I didn't realize I had to provide that in advance, so I apologize for that. The orientation packet contains links to specific web pages covering important topics to properly onboard a new member. It walks the member through the city code ordinances, the job description, the library's long-range plan, and its policies and procedures, which takes me to the next task this board has focused on, reviewing policies and procedures. So slide 6 is that, Ms. Tierney noticed that some of the library's policies and procedures have not been reviewed for a while, and in some cases, over a decade. So she tasked the board to review these documents to provide recommendations based on best practices within the library industry across the nation, while keeping in mind how COVID-19 changed some of these practices. We have reviewed 4 documents and are quickly moving to the remaining slides. So in closing, just want to say that it's an honor to serve the city of Kyle in this capacity. We, the board members, enjoy working with Ms. Tierney and look forward to making a positive impact in this community, but also accomplishing the goals established in 2023 to ensure the proper administration of the library resources. We're ready to serve this city council in any capacity as needed, and thank you for your time. I can answer any questions you may have for me.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you to the board for all the hard work you did. I remember seeing you last year when we were doing the back-to-school event, when you were reading to the children out there. It really excited me seeing that we have board members that were really involved in volunteering in these events. Any kind of new plans that you are coming up with that you know of for the next year or for this fall?
So there's a lot of things that we are talking about, but right now the main priority is reviewing all the policies and procedures, especially with Ms. Tierney being fairly new in her role. I think it's giving all of us an opportunity to really look at how the library works, but how we can make it better, especially because COVID-19 did change a lot of ways that people are accessing information. So we want to make sure that the policies and procedures reflect that. So that's right now the priority. But of course, like with the budget recently, we assisted Ms. Tierney in looking at that to see if not that if it was appropriate, but just assisting her in whatever way we can.
Okay, well, good. Yeah, because that is true. I think with a lot of things, when it came to the pandemic, I think the new term now is we're no longer being flexible. We have to learn to be adaptable to the changes that we have, especially when it came to virtual learning, when it came to meetings and social distancing and things like that. So it's learning how to do that again. But thank you so much for all your hard work. Thank you.
Of course.
Councilmember Flores Kale.
Thank you. To piggyback off of what Councilmember Tobias said, thank you, and thank you to the board. These are volunteer positions, and so I really appreciate anybody who takes the time to join a board. You guys have a lot of events, some really, really great events. My concern is, how do we get that information out there? I don't know who you guys go through to advertise or to get the events out there, but I'm guilty of looking at it later and being like, oh, this happened and this happened. Or I think, is there still like a Pokemon? And I only know about Pokemon because my son is a big fan of it. But if stuff like that, if we can get the word out even more, I think this library could be even better. And we have a great library, by all means we do, but what I'd like to see is more participation from the residents. And my gut instinct tells me that they just don't know that it's happening. And so whatever, if you guys want me to repost, I can repost. I just had a conversation today with Bryan about how can we advertise in different ways, so it's not all just social media as well. So if the board can come up with those ideas, by any means necessary, I would be open to listening to that.
Of course, yeah, I'll be happy to take that to the board and for us to discuss. I know that they do an amazing job, and they put a calendar every single month of all the activities that they have planned. I know that a lot of information is shared via social media, but as commented earlier, not everybody, right, looks at social media. So I understand that, but be happy to discuss that.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Councilmember Parsley.
I just wanted to give a quick comment. The library is one of the sites that pops up more in my notifications. You guys do an amazing job at doing rotating, flyers with good information and nice coloring. They are very eye-catching. So I really think that you guys do an amazing job. Also at establishing your calendar with all the activities. I printed one and sent it to my son because you have a chess thing going on Mondays, and he's obsessed playing chess. And I'm like, okay, awesome. So I was really happy to see also that you have a dialogue that is going to be like a Spanish tertulia. time, and I would love to visit sometime to see if there is anything that I can do to help. But great job overall. I think the board is doing an amazing job, and the library
Well-
is just really rocks.
And for the record, we don't do all that work. I wish I could take the credit for that. That really comes from the library, but we certainly would be happy to see how we can promote all of that, because I agree. They have a lot of events, diverse events, and I think that the city of Kyle can certainly benefit from all that, all ages, from all backgrounds. And but yes, Ms. Tierney and her staff, they do an absolute amazing job. It is not the board.
I know, but I'm sure the board gives feedback, right?
Yes,
Right.
ma'am.
That's part of what the
Absolutely.
boards were created to do, is to give feedback to make things better. So I give her kudos because she's done an amazing job,
Yes.
but I'm pretty sure you guys are right behind that.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Hauser.
Yeah, just real quick, Colleen, do you guys work with Rachel on promoting the events?
Yes.
Okay, all right, cool. I want to talk to you later.
Any other comments? Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Tierney. Appreciate y'all very much.
Thank you.
All right, next up is agenda item number 7, receive a report and hold discussion regarding Planning and Zoning Commission activities. Mr. Atkinson.
All right, Will Atkinson, Director of Planning for the record. As the previous discussion, we have the Planning and Zoning Commission report and discussion, so I will like to introduce Alex Guerra as our Planning and Zoning Chair.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Alex Guerra, I am the Chairman for Planning and Zoning, and we're here just to give a brief presentation on what we've been doing as of late. You can go to the next one. Okay, some of the major things that we have been doing, just as Council has, many of our items that we do go through UC as well. The comprehensive plan is the largest one right now for both us and for you, I believe. Verdunity has done an amazing job. I've been very happy with them from the beginning. They've been working with us throughout the processes with you as well. There are many other items that we are looking at, though. Some of the items that we do discuss at Planning and Zoning are not just the items that staff brings to us. One thing I am encouraged most about the current commissioners is they are looking at the code. They are seeing ways that they can make suggestions, not just sit back and do a yes or no vote when an item comes. There are certain items that we've been looking at, minimum lot sizes for certain zoning districts. We've looked at parks and subdivisions and other items the commissioners are bringing and we are discussing. Hopefully we'll soon have something to then present to council. The entire commission did recently serve on the Impact Fee Advisory Committee, along with one other gentleman, I think Mr. Dipple, and we together did conclude that, and it should be coming to council soon. We recently just did talk through the landscape ordinance. I believe that's coming to you later tonight with some changes that we do recommend for our landscape ordinance. Okay. On the next one. Okay, and then many of the items that we do cover regularly are items that you do see. There are items that you see, such as zoning requests, conditional use permits. These are items that will come to us. We will make a recommendation to council, and then it will come to you typically at the next meeting. But there are also several items that we do look at that end with planning and zoning, and the commissioners take those very seriously, such as tree mitigation, or tree removal is one of those. And it is a discussion that, when someone comes and they ask to remove a tree from the city of a certain caliper size, it does come to planning and zoning. Planning and zoning does have to approve it or not. And since these items do come to planning and zoning and end with planning and zoning, the commissioners take those very seriously. I believe those are all the items that we have listed as what we've been doing recently. The comprehensive plan is by far the most, but we have continued on with each of the other items.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Guerra. I do watch a lot of your meetings, and you guys, the commissioners there are very thorough. I'm letting you know that, especially Ms. Commissioner Sarah Cochran. She asks the real tough questions, and it's good to see that. And I'm glad that, you really take in light about the trees, because when we had a development over there off of Roland Lane, and a lot of those trees went down, I mean, I'm very familiar with that area, and it was kind of bittersweet to see a lot of that. But I'm glad that the commissioners really take that seriously, especially with a lot of our oak trees that are here and native trees, that they really look at to see if it really qualifies for it to go down, or if it's possible a tree that's just, on its last stage, that you really look at it to say, yes, this is pretty much not going to last. But I think it's very important that we look at that. But thank you to you and all the commissioners for all their hard work. If they're
Thank you.
listening out there, thank you so much.
Yes. To your first comment about Commissioner Onken, I would have to say I'm very grateful to the council. This last group of commissioners you all did approve. Commissioner Onken, Commissioner Siegel, Commissioner DeLore, they are all in their first year, but they are all very strong commissioners. They have each made great impact to the commission within this just first year that they've been on. I expect good things from all of them in the years to come. And for the tree removal, yes, if it's under a certain caliper, it does not come to us, but over a certain size, it does. Just this last meeting, for quite a while, our discussion was on that one item because it is so important to us at
Yes,
Planning and Zoning.
that's true. And they do their homework, and it's very appreciated.
Yes, sir.
So thank you very much to all y'all.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Councilor Zuniga.
Yes, just also say that y'all do a really good job of looking through the planning and zoning recommendations that we see in the staff memos with the votes and the way that they go. That's really been useful for us to see in the backups. So we really appreciate that.
That is great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and maybe in addition, like when there's a flood zone area, as additional context, so that we're more aware of what kind of development is coming that could potentially impact our residences.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Parsley.
I just had a quick note, just to piggyback on what you just said. I do agree that you guys have a very strong group of commissioners right now. I am one that when we're reviewing the agenda and I see that there was like a 4-1 or something like that, I'd love to go back and review the meetings to see what the discussion was like and, what kind of questions took place, because we here see things and we really rely a lot into what the decisions that the votes that you guys take. So I'm glad to know that, you as a chair think that you have a strong group of people in there that give us good support whenever we're reviewing stuff. So
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Thank you. I will say that I do encourage the commissioners, anytime they do have a dissenting vote, to explain why. Because, I do trust that in many situations you all are seeing those meetings, you are hearing those discussions, or many times you may ask Mr. Atkinson, what was the reason for the two people? Exactly. And so giving that reason, because I know there are times that I take a position and I disagree with my fellow commissioners. But I still give my reason, I give why, and I believe that you all will take that into consideration, just as any of the other commissioners in their comments.
All right. Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Guerra.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, next up, receive a report, hold a discussion, and provide staff direction regarding the potential expansion of Google Fiber to Kyle. Mr. Langley.
Yes, sir. We're pleased to announce that Google Fiber is interested in coming to the city of Kyle with their product. We have with us tonight John Michael Cortez, who's going to present Google information, Google Fiber information, and their plan for the community. So I'm going to ask John Michael to go through his presentation. And John Michael, we appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, Mayor, Council. Again, John Michael Cortez with Google Fiber. I'm the head of government and community affairs for Google Fiber here in Texas, and I'm joined by my colleague, there he is, Luke Rickel, who's our engineering lead for Central Texas here. And we're very pleased to have the opportunity to be here with you today to discuss with the council, to start a discussion about the exciting opportunity to bring more and better internet service choices to residents and small businesses here in Kyle. So, if you'll indulge me, I'll maybe give you about a 5 or 10 minute overview of our program, and then address any questions that you may have or comments that you may have about this exciting opportunity.
You did have some slides that we presented, Jerry. I don't know if we're getting those up for the audience.
Yeah,
We
no,
have the PowerPoint slides in the background.
Yeah, sure you go. Well, I'll just start by saying, Google Fiber was founded, well over 10 years ago with a mission and a belief that everybody in every community, whether it's big, small, rural, or urban, deserves access to internet that's fast, reliable, open, and fairly priced. And for nearly 10 years, we've been acting out that mission here in Central Texas, starting with the announcement in the early 2010s that would be making Austin our second Google Fiber city in our program after Kansas City. And since that time, Google Fiber has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in Central Texas, employed thousands of Central Texans, and constructed a network in the Austin area that includes tens of millions of linear feet of fiber that is passing hundreds of thousands of households and small businesses, and it's resulted in many, many, many thousands of happy customers. And we'd like to do the same here in Kyle. We have made so much progress in Austin that we're really pretty close to having built out the entirety of the city of Austin. And so for the last several years, we've been excited to have conversations with other communities about continued expansion of our network to serve the good folks here in Central Texas. Some progress that we've made, along with our continued build in Austin, is earlier this year we finished a complete build-out, and that's important to note, a complete build-out of a smaller city, but the city of Sunset Valley. Earlier this year, we began building just on the other side of the Austin city limits in unincorporated Travis County. So we're now serving residents outside of the city of Austin and Travis County. We recently announced and are right about to start construction in the city of Round Rock, just north of Austin. And we recently announced agreements with the city councils and the staff in the cities of Westlake and Rollingwood to also begin to build our network in those communities. And so we're real excited about the progress we've made so far, and excited about the discussions that we've had with your city staff here about potential expansion to serve Kyle as well. So some of the benefits of Google Fiber coming to the city of Kyle is without any investment by the city, without any expenditure from the city, Google Fiber will invest millions of dollars that becomes part of your tax base here locally in a world-class fiber to the premises network. Our deployment method, the way that we build our network, is generally faster, cleaner, less disruptive than the way these networks have traditionally been deployed in communities. And that kind of unique way, that deployment toolkit that we have, is really kind of the secret sauce that allows us to, when we come into a community like Kyle, we want to come in with the intent that we are going to serve every neighborhood, every resident, every small business in the community, and not kind of cherry pick certain neighborhoods, but because we have this way of doing things, we can come in with that intent. And in my experience in working with Google Fiber, we really live out that intent and do everything we can to build to every household in the community that we partner with. One of the other benefits, of course, is that for residents and small business owners, we bring real competition for internet service. Competition on speeds, on price, on reliability, and perhaps most importantly on service to our customers. We really are leading the industry in being a leader in customer service. Of course, that results in, again, happy residents and small business owners in a community, and generally a great economic opportunity and more fair and equitable access for residents and small businesses in the community. There is a kind of a catch, though. For us to be able to do that, we really do have to establish with the city, with the community, a long-term relationship. And that relationship requires us to get to alignment and agreement on a few key items. One of them is that deployment toolkit, the way that we build our network. Again, it is a little different than what you may have experienced with other providers in the community. We are very confident that our methods, you will find and residents will find, are a lot faster, a lot less disruptive. But we do need to have alignment on the way that we build. We have begun those conversations with the city staff. We've provided them with our standards, sample permits, sample designs, so that they can review those and make sure that we're in alignment. I think just earlier this morning, we hosted a successful site visit with some of the city staff at one of our many ongoing construction sites in Austin and Travis County, so they could see firsthand how we build our network, how we restore areas, how quickly it moves, how minimally disruptive it is. And so I'm pleased to say that that went very well. And so we'll continue those conversations and hopefully quickly get to full alignment on our build methodology with the city. The other area where for us to have a successful relationship, we need to have some alignment, and that is on a right-of-way agreement that kind of spells out that relationship and gives Google Fiber the opportunity to deploy our network in the cities and in the communities right of way. Kind of spells out who's responsible for what on an ongoing basis. It also provides us a vehicle to charge and to remit to the city a right-of-way access fee so that Google Fiber can compensate the city for the privilege of having our network in the city's right-of-way to serve residents and small businesses. That right-of-way agreement we've shared with the city staff and look forward to getting their feedback on it soon and hopefully very quickly getting aligned on that, similar to what we have been able to do very recently with other cities in Central Texas, because it really is the execution of that right-of-way agreement by the council that kind of gives us the green light to start deploying resources, to invest in more advanced design and engineering, start lining up construction resources and applying for permits, et cetera, so that we can begin our work and move very, very quickly. The other third thing that we need to be successful really as part of this relationship is just a reliable and consistent permitting process. We need to be able to predict the length of time it will take to get permits so that our operation, again, is very fast, very efficient. And so we need to be able to schedule things out many months in advance. And so we need to know when we're going to have the green light to begin construction in a particular area, in a particular neighborhood, on particular streets. And so that's just part of that ongoing relationship with the city if it's a commitment to making this a priority program on both sides. So that's really the conversation that we've started over the last couple of weeks, and we will continue. And hopefully, again, very quickly, we'll get alignment on all the details with your great staff and be back in front of you in short order with that right-of-way agreement for execution. I have a lot more I could say, but I thought it might be good for us to stop there and see if there's any questions that Luke and I might be able to answer for you.
Awesome. I see a lot of hands up. Mr. Langley, is there anything you wanted to add to the presentation?
No, I think we did a good job of providing an overview of the program, and if the council's interested in proceeding, we'll finalize some of the engineering details that were mentioned about the trenching and some of the right-of-way. It's called micro-trenching in the roadways, existing roadways. So one of the things we need to figure out is exactly the depth that we believe is appropriate to make sure those depths are maintained in the permitting process and the construction process, and that we have good control over our infrastructure. That's one of the primary things that we want to make sure of is our infrastructure is protected, because it's not only new roadways, which are easier to do, it's existing roadways as well. And so that's some of the details that we're working through, but if the council's interested in proceeding with that, we can finalize that, come up with an agreement, and bring it back for you at a future item to have you consider acting on it.
Councilor Heiser.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. A couple quick questions. How does Google Fiber determine which areas of the city receive access to the program? Or
Again,
services?
thank you, council member. How do we decide? Well, again, we start with the intent we're going to serve the entire community, right? And so it first starts with our kind of preliminary design, how we build the network, which determines, where we start, where we're able to locate our first facilities that tie into our backbone. And usually we start there and we kind of expand out from there. And as we go, some of it is largely dependent on that deployment toolkit. And Luke can get up and fill in the details, but there are times if we aren't able to use our deployment methodologies in a flexible manner, sometimes that does prevent us from actually building an area. If we don't have the access to the right-of-way that we need to be able to build efficiently, then that does pose oftentimes a barrier. Sometimes it's if there's an ongoing infrastructure project that is in the area that's going to be a while, we may decide, hey, we're going to come back to that area later. We've got some pockets of our network in Austin, in parts of the community that we built 7-8 years ago, where because of a city water, wastewater project, we had to skip those areas, and we're now in the process of coming back to some of those areas. But generally, our intent is to build every area, so it's really not much of a decision.
Yep. And if I could piggyback on that too, there's also areas of Austin that for whatever reason our preferred method of installation wasn't approved by the jurisdiction at the time. We've then gone back to look at other deployment methods and are coming back now, circling back to those same areas to be able to deploy them. So it is still very much our intent to get to every home, every business within the area. It's just a timing factor that has a lot to do with that installation method.
Just one other thing I might mention that I don't think it'll be that big of an issue here in Kyle. There are neighborhoods in some of the communities that we serve where the neighborhood streets are actually not owned and maintained by that municipality. They're private. They're owned and maintained by an HOA. Similar to our need to have a right-of-way agreement with the municipality, with the city, we would also then, in that case, have to have a separate agreement with that HOA who owns and maintains the rights-of-way there. In most instances, they're happy for us to come in because they want the service, but there have been a few instances where some neighborhoods are like, we're not ready for that at this time, and so those neighborhoods were not able to build. But that really hasn't been that big of an issue, but we would have to have a separate agreement for those types of neighborhoods.
And if I could, just to be clear on those types of neighborhoods, we're still leaving assets outside of those neighborhoods. So if they ever were to change their mind, we could go in at quite quickly.
Yeah, thank you. Just a general statement. Some of the other companies that have come into the city have created a lot of headaches for residents, and they've lost, there's monetary loss to their property, and it hasn't been fixed. I think even to date, there's still some people whose yards were pretty much destroyed in some areas. So that's definitely going to be something that's important, is how you all in advance want to address working with the residents to make sure that any work done on their property they are compensated if it's not done properly.
Well, Councilmember, this may be a good opportunity to talk a little bit more about our deployment methodology, our preferred. So what the traditional deployment methods are for this type of network, they generally fall into aerial, so using existing utility poles and wiring fiber strand up there. Not a lot of that here in Kyle, so that's probably not an opportunity there. It's actually not our preferred method anyway. A lot of this infrastructure, the other method that's traditionally deployed is directional drilling or boring. So this is probably the cause of some of the challenges. You have a big, noisy boring machine that's sitting in somebody's front yard for several days, weeks, that's drilling 3 feet or deeper, and the resident who lives on the other end of the block has a big hole dug in their yard, waiting for where the boring comes out. It's loud, it's messy, it's disruptive. You have lots of other underground utility conflicts and strikes potentially, and damage to landscape, etc. Directional drilling and boring is something that's in our toolkit, and we use it when it's appropriate, but the predominant method and our preferred method of deployment, and what we think really enables us to move quickly and serve the entire community is, as your city manager mentioned, micro-trenching in the hardscape in the right-of-way. So just to generally describe it, what we have is a machine that's basically a saw, and we start on one edge of a residential street, and generally if there's curb in the gutter pan, in that seam, if one exists, where the curb meets the pavement, this saw will cut about a 1 to 2 inch wide trench, anywhere from 10 to 18 inches deep or so. depending on the standards that we set with the city and the road conditions, et cetera. And it's a moving operation. It very quickly cuts that shallow trench on that side of the street. The way then right behind that, we have another crew that is laying down fiber and conduit into that shallow trench. And then behind that, we have another crew with a concrete truck with a specially formulated flowable fill concrete that starts restoring that trench immediately. What we can generally commit to the public or assert to the public that the general experience with residents is you may wake up in the morning, getting ready to go to work or drop kids off at school, and you'll see our crews deploying on your street. And by the time you get home from work or school, they're done with your street. So it's not a process that takes weeks on end. Now there is work we have to come back and do. We have to have some lateral cuts and we do put fiber in the right-of-way behind the curb so that folks can tie into the network. But as far as the construction disruption, the blocking off of any parts of the right-of-way or big noisy machines, you're talking less than a day on a given residential street. In most neighborhoods, we're done with most of the construction in that neighborhood in just a matter of a few weeks. And on any given street, we're there for maybe a day with that construction. And being shallower like that, again, is minimal impact to the right-of-way. It's fast, it's less disruptive, it's restored the same day. And because of the shallow depths, we have very, very few conflicts with other underground utilities. Not saying it never happens, but it's very, very rare as compared to directional drilling or boring. Do you want to augment that at all?
No, I think you captured the vast majority.
I will say that in addition to that primary running line that we put on either side of the street, in a traditional kind of single-family neighborhood environment, about every other home in between the homes, right at the property line, will have a service line, and still in the city's right-of-way, but behind the curb, usually in the softscape. If there's a beauty strip in between the sidewalk and the curb, a little grassy area, it'll be located there. We'll locate in between those homes a little vault with some slack cable, and that's where, once we're done with construction and we've activated the network for that neighborhood, if either one of the residents on either side of the property line wants service, that's where that connection would be made, is right there at that lateral service line.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Parsley.
Thank you. So I basically have AT&T and Frontier on speed dial because I get emails once or twice a week about the damages that these companies have caused to the yard. So I understand your deployment may be different, but I want to know how fast are you going to respond when you tear somebody's yard and it doesn't look to the pre-existing conditions or better than the pre-existing conditions. And what I want to know, because I know you're going to promise me that you're going to be reaching out and you're going to make sure that all the residents are happy, because that's what all the companies did. And I do want you to come, but it becomes a headache for us to have to respond and go after whoever the representative is. So I want to make sure that I want to know how you are going to ensure me at all times that we will be notified of the changes in your organization, and I'm going to have up-to-date contact information. Who do I need to call that will answer the phone or answer the email within 24 hours and tell me we will be at so-and-so's residence, during this time, because that's the problem I'm having. And I made sure the residents are watching right now so they know who you are and they know who to contact, because I want to make sure that they have the same information that I have.
Right. Thank you, Council Member. Well, absolutely. Our commitment is to leave the community as close to as we found it or better. And that's not just the city's infrastructure, but also any impact we've had on anybody's yard or any other part of the residence. So just a couple of things I would note. We have a standard of in advance of construction starting in any particular neighborhood. One, I will say we will permit all of our work, right? So we will be applying for permits with the city before we begin any work, so everybody knows where we'll be working generally and when, right? So that's one thing. And also, before we actually start construction, we will start to put out construction signage. We will also begin placing on every residence a door hanger in multiple languages. That also includes a toll-free number that's a specific construction hotline. And that hotline is actually answered by actual humans 24/7. And any issue, any question related to construction, that's typically the first place that people will call, and they're usually able to resolve like almost any issue that's raised regarding our construction. But we know sometimes people don't see those things, or they get lost, or there's some other issue that's not able to get to full resolution. By the way, the construction signage will also have that I think it's the 1877 number on it. But in addition, we will, again, because this is an ongoing relationship with the municipality, we will need to have regular communication and meetings with the city staff. So the city staff will always have points of contact within Google Fiber that they can refer you to. And there will be somebody like me, who's here in every community. That will be a point of contact, a point of escalation for the city and for the council. But we maintain a list of key contacts, whether it's for engineering, design, and permitting, construction, maintenance, or any other issue. You will have a constantly updated list of contacts that you will be able to reach and be responsive. Because this is an ongoing commitment and a relationship, because once we build the network, even if we build the entirety of the city, as y'all well know, this is a very fast-growing community. There will be new communities that we need to serve, so we're not going to be concluding our construction anytime because there's just going to be new growth, and I anticipate that will continue. But in addition, we have to be closely coordinated, hand in glove with the city for things like street maintenance. A part of our relationship will be being aware of when the city is going to do maintenance on a street or other infrastructure projects that impact our facilities. We need to be aware of those so we can move them out of the way so that the city can get about its important work without us being in conflict. So we're not going anywhere once the network is being built. We're going to stay here, and you will always have a point of contact. The other thing I would say is on just residents and being responsive. Our attitude is not just to leave things as good or better than we found them, but our goal is to delight residents, because we don't want the construction process to happen and anybody to have a bad taste in their mouth when we're done, because we want these folks as customers. We want them to actually be delighted and pleased with our construction process. Again, because if they're not likely to be customers, and we want them as customers. So our commitment to you is to always be available and to be responsive.
And I do want to add something to that. You said that you're going to leave door handles, and that's not good enough for me. I want to make sure that you guys knock on the door and talk to somebody before you get on their yards, because that's the second complaint that probably we got the most, is that the job started and nobody was notified. And so you won't hear about it, we will. So I don't think, and I'm making this clear, I want to make sure you knock on the door before you start work in anybody's yard. Are we good with that?
That is not something that we typically do in advance of construction, but it is something that I can bring back to our team to see if there's a way that we can accommodate that. We do have folks that, once the network is built, that go door to door to advise residents that, hey, you can sign up for service now, we're done. But I don't know that we've ever done that before construction, but that is, I can commit to you that I can get you an answer very quickly before we ask you to approve anything, whether or not we'd be able to do something like that.
And I'm sorry, I'm frustrated because just today I had to, send a nasty email to somebody that didn't respond. Like, it's been over a week and I have residents reaching out to me, and it took, maybe a couple of ugly words for somebody to actually respond. I don't want to get to that point.
Well, the other thing I'll commit to is you will have my cell phone.
Okay, I do want that. All right, thank you.
Wow.
I'm good.
Record. Councilman Flores Kell.
I was just going to add that anyone that's on those point of contact lists too, they're going to be local to this Central Texas, Austin area. None of us are going to be further away than just a drive to come down to actually see something as well. So that's something that we can definitely commit, that we think that makes us a little bit different from some of our competitors.
Councilman Flores Kell.
All Great. Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. So my first question is going to be, does Google staff their own construction workers or employees that bury the lines, or is it a third party?
So we have a construction manager that would be managing the construction in a given community, like Kyle. That would be a Google Fiber employee. But we do employ local vendors on the majority of the construction work here in Central Texas. And we have a portfolio of vendors that we have been working with for a long time who are familiar with our deployment methods. We have certain standards for how they're building in a community, how they interact with the community. One of the things that I have heard may be a priority is to have a consistent set of vendors in a community like Kyle. So everybody's familiar. We're not rotating in a new vendor, every neighborhood. You would want some
Are you
consistency.
saying you might use the same vendors that we're complaining about?
I'm sorry?
Are you saying you might use the same vendors that we've been complaining about?
I don't know who your vendors are.
Okay.
I doubt it.
You should probably learn,
Yeah,
figure it
I
out,
doubt it.
because that's an automatic no.
But
So,
if there are vendors that would be unacceptable to the city, I think it's pretty safe to say we wouldn't use them.
I think AT&T and Frontier probably thought the same thing, and yet here we are. I'm not in any big rush to get a third internet provider. Now, I want to state it's not Google, because I wish Google would have come first. And unfortunately, it's AT&T and Fiber and Frontier, and we're dealing with all these issues. My concern is they're digging up the yards, and you guys are digging up the roads. So I don't know if that's a good time to do it. I know it's micro on the road, but our roads are already bad. And I'm not sure if you have a real good concept of how a lot of the east side roads are, because just driving on the roads by themselves is not good. So I don't know how easy that would be for you guys to install that way. And then I also have a concern about your hut locations, because I don't know if Councilmember Daniela has seen this. It is really not attractive at all. And I don't know if we could build a different kind of fence or something that you can't see through, because I don't know where you would put that, where somebody would be like, oh, it's nice to look at. It's what I'm looking at. If you want to put it up on the screen, all the way to the left. We're trying to beautify our city, and that, for me, doesn't cut it. I would need something more, and I do understand the need to have it, and I understand the need for the fans and the reason why you would put it there, but I guess my question would be, is this what AT&T is doing as well? Does anybody know? Or is this what Frontier's doing?
I don't know what that infrastructure looks like. You're going to have some type of device like that, but we can, I think if the request is that Google Fiber consider beautifying that, screening it more appropriately,
Or
we could look at those things.
Another thing that you guys could do for future growth is you could put a conduit in the subdivisions, and then you guys can lease that out to other internet providers and make yourself some money and make it, and rest assured, our city will never again have to have the road tore up or the yards tore up. And that would be a plus for the residents. I mean, if this is the only time that this would be an issue, I could get on board with that. I could say, okay, they put a conduit in there, there's all these lines. I don't even know if that's doable, but I would encourage the city to do it if we could afford it. But maybe that's something that Google can look at to make sure that to reassure us that this is it. Like, we no longer have to go through this.
Well, what I can speak to is the hut location. Just generally, we do try to locate those where it's out of the way. It's usually behind something, it's not in a prominent area. We've already assessed a few potential locations for a hut that we would need to serve the community here in Kyle. And I think it's, they're not readily visible from the street. They're kind of tucked in or near other things that look similar, so we're not adding.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on that. So especially the primary locations that we're looking at, they're co-located with cell towers. So there will already be one of these structures there, if not multiple of them. So when we do that, it's not like we're adding some new eyesore. I know that we've also done some sort of beautification in other areas as well, if that's something that y'all would be interested in.
To respond to that, I was not aware, and I probably wasn't on council when those other things were built. So, trying to fulfill my duty as a council member, if you could, I don't know if you can make that brick or make it artsy or make it something that you know, even looks better than something that you would see in a jail. I think that would be great. But thank you for considering Kyle. Again, I wish you guys were first. What took you guys so long to get here?
Well, we just, our network's kind of growing organically, so we had to make a certain amount of progress in Austin first, and we're kind of expanding, as you can tell, out from there. But I think that there are lots of communities in Kyle where we will be the first, certainly fiber to the home provider. There's communities that have probably access to DSL internet, which is probably not adequate for the types of internet usage that people, internet needs that people have today. There's almost certainly cable providers that also provide internet service, and you know, for some households that's perfectly adequate. But what we've seen, when Google Fiber was first started, we said, hey, we're going to offer a 1 gigabit symmetrical service that's gigabit upload and download, and everybody thought we were crazy. Nobody ever needs that amount of internet bandwidth. That's nuts. Nobody, it's silly. Fast forward to today, you know, the average household has dozens, tens, if not dozens of internet-enabled device, whether it's your TVs that are streaming, or laptops or cell phones that are on your Wi-Fi, or a Ring camera. You know, some people's washer and dryer and refrigerator have internet connections now. All of those connections are eating into the bandwidth that's available, both for download and upload. I don't know if any of y'all have Ring cameras, but it's constantly uploading video. That's eating up a lot of your upload, which makes it difficult if you're trying to video conference or do telehealth or something as well. So what we have seen, and especially it was incredibly pronounced through the pandemic, but the demand for bandwidth has really jumped up, and that's not going anywhere. So people thought we were crazy by offering 1 gigabit up and down. Well, now most providers, if they can, are building fiber networks to provide not just 1 gig, but multi-gig. We offer now a 2 gigabit service. We will very soon, including in Kyle, if we're able to build a network, be offering 5 and 8 gigabit service. And we're testing 20 gigabit service because we think that's the future, as more and more people are demanding more and more bandwidth. And I would say that fiber to the premise, fiber to the home, is really the only long-term scalable solution. The theoretical bandwidth that you can have through fiber is almost unlimited, whereas the other technologies have a ceiling, and some of them they've already hit it or they're going to hit it, and so while there are and you can see that there are other providers who are building fiber networks in Kyle because they see that coming too, most likely, but to your point, in many parts of the community, including the southeastern portion of Kyle, which is probably one of the areas where we might start building our network, we're likely to be the first and probably the only fiber provider in that part of the community to bring service to those residents.
Councilman Zuniga.
Yeah, I also just had one quick question, and thank you for the presentation. So if council does decide to bring Google Fiber, what will a homeowner see in the easement of their property? What can they expect in terms of what's going to appear in their front yard? Because as the last ones came in the easement, we were surprised to see very large conduit boxes that were buried but still visible above ground, and many that were very large where there were many main connections. So will there be more of that coming to a homeowner's easement property?
In that area where I said we would have a lateral off of the primary running line, they are just behind the curb, depending if there's a sidewalk that's right up against the curb, it would be in the right-of-way that's right behind the sidewalk. But generally, if there's a grassy area or other softscape in between the curb and the sidewalk, again, every other home at the property line in that area, we will need to have buried some fiber, slack fiber, so that folks can make that connection. What we typically put there, and again, all below ground, is a drop vault, which is, how big are those things?
Those are 10 inches by 15 inches and subgrade.
Yeah, they look like a little, like the same thing that some residents have for their water valve or sprinkler box. They're little plastic covers that are flush with the ground that are about yay big, would be in there. Now, some of the other larger ones, larger vaults where there's lots of connections being made, we will have to locate some of those along the network. But we typically try to keep those out of the front of homes. We try to keep those in the side so that it's not visible when you're looking at the front facade of a home. They are necessary for the network, but we try to put them so they're not visually obtrusive. Is that?
Correct.
Yeah, that's
or on arterials or collectors away from residential homes. That is our goal.
So a homeowner who might have a request that it be moved if it's in the, because I had the experience, where the plans were made, it was going to end up at the front end of my property. Luckily, it still stayed there, but we got it buried a little lower. So that was helpful to me, but will y'all work with the homeowners who might want to maintain their
Yes.
yards without seeing additional conduit boxes in there?
Yes, we will work, again, we try to leave people happy. We don't want them to be upset because, again, we want, now there's those larger vaults, they can be moved somewhat, but they still need to exist somewhere in that area for the network to be completed. But yes, I've personally worked with several residents and see where we could potentially relocate. Some people have very extensive landscaping right at the front of their houses, like they don't want, flower beds and whatever. We do try to take those things into consideration when we're locating those, and yes, we will work with homeowners as much as we can.
Thank you.
I have one quick question.
Councilmember Parsley.
I do have a resident that wants to know what kind of chemicals do you use when drilling?
I don't know that we use any.
I don't believe that we are using
No,
chemicals.
No.
At least not to my knowledge.
No, I think the only thing we do is when the saw is going through, we use water to keep dust down, right? And we have a big vacuum attached to the back to suck up any dust, right?
Yep.
But I'm not aware of any chemicals that we use.
In most of the holes that we're drilling, we use a method referred to as hydrovacking. So it's a method of water and suction in order to be able to create the hole and remove the debris.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, agenda item number 9, public hearing to consider proposed assessments to be levied against assessable property within improvement area number 1 and the remainder area of Limestone Creek Public Improvement District, respectively, pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 372 of the Texas Local Government Code. Ms. Leibe.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members, Stephanie Leibe, Norton Rose Fulbright. Our firm services bond counsel to the city. This public hearing is related to agenda item number 11, which would be approval of a service and assessment plan and assessment role for the Limestone Creek development.
All right. Thank you. This is a public hearing, so if there are no objections, I'm going to open the public hearing now. Seeing none, the public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and speak? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Public hearing is now closed. Next up, agenda item number 10, an ordinance of the City of Kyle, Texas approving the final project and finance plan for Reinvestment Zone number 4, City of Kyle, Texas, and approving and authorizing the mayor to execute a TIRZ agreement in connection with the development of the zone. Ms. Leibe.
So, Mayor, Council members, I'm going to provide you all a presentation that'll walk through all 3 agenda items related to the TIRZ plan, the PID assessment levy, and then also the bond issuance. So for the Limestone Creek development, just from a historical perspective, the development agreement with Meritage Homes was approved by council initially on June 21st, 2022, and then subsequently amended on both August 18th of 2022 and March 7th of 2023. The PID for Limestone Creek South was created October 18th, 2022. in connection with the TIRZ. The TIRZ creation and the preliminary project and finance plan was approved by council on March 7th, 2023. And then the preliminary service and assessment plan for the PID was approved on June 6th, 2023. As it relates to the tax increment zone, the tax increment zone is divided between a residential portion and a commercial portion. For the residential portion, residential tax increments will be used to pay administrative costs associated with the zone. It'll be used to offset PID assessments up to a maximum annual offset amount. It'll be used to pay eminent domain fees or negotiated settlement fees related to land acquisition for the construction of Goforth Road. It can also be used to pay the residential developer for actual costs of any residential projects that are provided in excess of those that have been funded by the PID. And then lastly, TIRZ revenues can be used to pay for any city-initiated projects. For the commercial tax increments at this time will only be used to pay administrative costs associated with the zone, and then to reimburse the city for any city-initiated roadway or drainage improvement projects. As it relates to the commercial portion, the city and the commercial developer, have not entered into a development agreement related to how that land would be developed. It's possible that the city could, along with the TIRZ board, come in and amend the project and financing plan to add additional projects if it deemed appropriate to do so at some time in the future. Limestone Creek PID bonds priced today. This is just a summary slide that was provided by FMS Bonds, the bond underwriter. It shows that the bonds were marketed to investors and priced at 3 term bonds. The last term bond is, 2053. First was 2033. And then the rates for the term bond, one was 4.75, one was 5.5, and one was 5.75. To provide security for those term bonds, an assessment will be levied within Limestone Creek Public Improvement District for Improvement Area 1. A total assessment in the amount of $15,694,000 will be levied. If you can go to the next slide. There you go. $15,694,000 will be levied in Improvement Area Number 1. For that assessment, it's broken into 2 parts. Part of that assessment will be used to secure the bonds if they're authorized tonight by council. The residual of the assessment will be used as security for what is a reimbursement agreement. It's intended that that reimbursement agreement will be taken out by a future series of PID bonds when 3-to-1 value to lien ratio within the development is met. So we would be coming back to council sometime in the future, probably within the next 12 months, to request authority to issue that B series of bonds. Also within the Limestone Creek development, there is what's called the remainder area or the residual area. Certain improvements within the PID provide benefits to the PID as a whole. So an assessment's levied on the remainder area within the PID, and the city will also enter into a reimbursement agreement with the developer for that remainder area. Just like the B series of bonds, it's intended that each future improvement area will fund their portion of the major improvements at the time that that development comes online. So this assessment that's levied tonight is intended to be supplanted or replaced with a future assessment as that development comes online and will be wrapped into that PID's or that phase's bond issuance. But this reimbursement area assessment is necessary for the city and developer to be able to enter into that reimbursement agreement since those improvements are coming online right now. So that's the end of the presentation. Happy to answer any questions that you all may have about either the PID or the
Does your
TIRZ.
presentation that included 11 and 12, so you do not have an additional presentation
right.
to make. So if there are no objections, I'm going to go ahead and bring up those other 2 items as well. Agenda item number 11, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Kyle, Texas, accepting and approving a service and assessment plan and assessment role for Limestone Creek PID. And agenda item number 12, an ordinance approving and authorizing the issuance and sale of the City of Kyle, Texas Special Assessment Revenue Bond Series 2023. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Leibe? Councilmember Parsley.
Do we have any graphics or presentation that show exactly where we are intending to put Go For Growth?
So I believe that there was a map behind the development agreement that was approved by council in March of this year that showed the contemplated construction and road placement of Go Forth Road.
Okay, so I really don't, I have asked most of my questions already to you. And I do understand the liability that we have at this point with this project. As you mentioned before, development agreements and amendments have been approved. The pit creation was approved, and so was the TIRZ. So at this point, I wish that we would have done things differently, that the process of these approvals would have engaged more residents, and that it wouldn't have been done the way it was. That being said, I do understand the legality of postponing or not approving this item. So those are my thoughts on that.
Councilmember Flores-Kale.
Thank you. My only concerns, in addition to the 6 homes, is also the drainage in that area. And it makes it tough for me as well, because I see some really sweet faces in the crowd, and I know they are going to be a big asset to that part of my district. And because of the way this whole situation has kind of played out, and it's not been as smooth as we all wished it would be, I can't continue to support that. Like, it's a tough call, and I know it's not you, Stephanie. I know it's not you, but I have a first and foremost, I have a responsibility to the residents and the landowners in that area, and so I can't vote for it. And to be fair, I don't even to piggyback off of what Councilmember Parsley said. I wondered how much the city actually talked to San Marcos in order to build a relationship, so we could have possibly moved the road just a little bit more into their district or into their area. But with that said, I'm not going to be able to vote for this as well, or at all.
Any other questions?
No, it's just that, I feel that we were put in a really tough position. Do we know that we need the road? Yes. Is it something that's going to benefit the entire city? Absolutely. I just wish the process would have been done differently. We have been put in a really difficult situation when voting for this item, and I know I voted no the past 2 times, just because I needed more engagement with the people that will be losing their homes. That being said, I understand that there will be a negotiation process with them in order to be able to make sure that they are taken care of. So.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda items number 10, 11, and 12.
Second.
All right, motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Heiser. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 4-3. All right, next up is agenda item number 13, first reading, approve an ordinance adopting the land use assumptions, capital improvements plan, and establishing an updated water impact fee totaling $7,984 per living unit equivalent, and an updated wastewater impact fee totaling $6,171 per LUE, amending ordinance number 298-2, and establishing an effective date. This item does have a public hearing. Mr. Langley.
Can I make a comment? Am I able to rescind my vote?
You're saying you want to re-vote on the last
I want
item?
to re-vote on the item, yes. Is that possible?
You can bring a motion for reconsideration. Let me check the rules just to make sure. So the answer is yes. I'll tell you how in a moment.
Okay.
Mr. Langley.
We may need to get our legal counsel back as well.
I voted no, and I need to vote yes for this.
Oh, I see.
Well, that can be done at any point during the meeting, so let's move on while they're having their discussions.
Okay, we can come back to the item if you want.
Yeah, we're on impact fees right now.
Yeah, so on item 13, so this one, we're going to recommend this item be postponed. We've had some discussions with the Home Builders Association about this, and they've raised some questions. We'd like some time to dive into those questions with them, answer them, and then come back to consider it at that time.
Okay, well, this item does have a public hearing, so if there are no objections, I'm going to open the public hearing now. Seeing none, the public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and speak? All right, seeing none, I'm going to leave this item open and make a motion to postpone until the next regularly scheduled city council meeting.
Yes, sir.
Motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Flores Kale. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Was that an aye? All right, I'd like to make a motion to reconsider agenda items 10 through 12. Motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Flores Kale. Is there discussion on that motion? All those in-
I just want to quickly, this is just reconsideration, right?
Yeah.
This item has been approved, as Ms. Leibe already said. So it really makes no sense for me to be voting no on this.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda items 10 through 12.
Second.
Motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Parsley. Is there discussion on the vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 5-2. All right, next up is agenda item number 14, approve a contract with AGH20 HOLDINGS, LLC, Round Rock, Texas, in an amount not to exceed $307,777 to furnish and install new restroom foundations and utilities for restrooms at 5 city parks as provided for in the proposal. And then I'm going to bring up agenda items number 15 as well, approve a contract with Restroom Facilities LTD, Marble Falls, Texas, in an amount not to exceed $690,270 for the design and construction of restrooms at 5 city parks and other associated materials as included in the proposal. Ms. Espinoza.
Mariana Espinoza, Parks and Recreation Director. This item 14 and 15, 14 is for the subgrade for the foundation of our new park restrooms, and item 15 is for 5 new park restrooms located at Lake Kyle Park, Mary Kyle Hartson Park, Waterleaf Park, Steeplechase Park, and Greg Clark Park. For the restroom foundations, the RFP was posted for 2 weeks. 1 bid was received, and staff recommends approval of AGH2 Holdings. Sorry, no. Okay, well, these have photos. I'm not sure where the photos are, but there's photos here of the foundations and that one as well. Agenda item number 15 is for the actual park restroom itself, and let me share that one. This RFP was actually posted twice. The first time we did receive 3 bids. However, none of the bids included the subgrade foundation. So it was reposted again for a second time, and we only received 1 bid the second time. Staff recommends approval of Restrooms Facilities LTD. And here are the designs of the park restrooms. As you can see, Mary Kyle Hartson Park would have a front porch and water fountain in the front, whereas the other park restrooms were not. And then a couple of photos of the inside of the restrooms are also attached. And that is all, if y'all have any questions. It will take about 90 days for the park restrooms to be installed and ready for use.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem, sorry, I had to.
All right. Okay. As you know, it's very hot outside, right? There can never be enough water fountains in these parks for these kids. So looking at the design for downtown, very beautiful, very nice. What would be the additional cost to add water fountains to the rest of them on the side? I know the architect design looks very nice. Maybe I would have liked to seen the same consistency across the board with all the parks looking that way, because I'm looking at it from Ms. Parsley's holiday themes, Christmas. Imagine having little decorations across wreaths and all that on all the parks with that kind of design. But besides that, the water fountains for those parks, would there be additional costing for those versus the one you have downtown? And what would be the difference in that?
Yep, so I have Hector Garcia, who is with Restrooms Facilities LTD online, who can probably best answer that, but we did have to take the restrooms and the other parks off because of the cost of the foundation. But
Okay.
Mr. Garcia, are you able to answer approximate for how much more it would cost?
Yes. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Really?
Okay, yeah, so, good to be here, y'all. Yeah, to add a drinking fountain to each of the buildings, it's $5,040. And what that is, it's an outdoor grade, dual height, ADA compliant drinking fountain with a bottle filler on it. And that will be inset into an alcove, making it ADA compliant as well. So yeah, total cost is $5,040 per building. One thing we can also do in lieu of that, which we've done with other cities, is we can actually run a separate water line if you wanted to install, let's say, a drinking fountain standalone outside of the building footprint. We can also run a water line to facilitate that for you at no cost. So those are the two options there.
Yes, if we could maybe look at that, because I know at Steeplechase, the water fountain's out on the side, like near the playground, and I'm not sure if there's still one by the actual restrooms themselves. But like I said, you can never have enough out there, especially when you're going to have that many people. And if, let's say, the water fountain does go down, then of course you have the other one there. And on the Kyle Hartson one, I see that it has the foundation of a higher level. Basically, you got concrete in the front. I'm looking at from somebody who needs to get up there with a wheelchair or with a stroller or with a walker. Would there be ramps there, or is it going to be on the base ground? Because I want to make sure that people who have that disability be able to utilize those bathrooms, and making sure the doors are wide enough as well to go in. And of course inside, I'm sure there'll be changing tables and all that.
Right, so our buildings they come with an attached 8-inch thick concrete slab foundation that is attached to the building when it gets delivered. That 8 inches is actually going to be buried into the ground. So the typical installation and what the GC will be doing is grading down 10 inches, compacting the soil, providing 2 inches of sand, and then the building will go on top of that. So that finished floor will be level with the surrounding area. And, of course, if you're going to put flat work around it, then the GC would adjust. But that finished floor would be 8 inches thick, but that'll be level with the ground. You won't have to put any kind of ramps or anything like that. And all the buildings are guaranteed to be ADA compliant. So the doors, everything from heights of the fixtures and distances inside from the toilets to the sinks and everything, that's all guaranteed to be ADA compliant.
Okay. Is there any objection for council to maybe look into adding those initial water lines for the fountains, for the water fountains?
Just to confirm, this would that cost be added to agenda item 14 or 15?
15.
15, okay. And it was 5,000, what was the total number again?
Mr. Garcia, what was the?
5,000, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's 5,040 to actually add a drinking fountain with a bottle filler, the dual height drinking fountain to the bottle filler to the building. If you just want us to run a water line from inside our chase to outside the building somewhere, there's no cost for that.
I don't have a problem with that, as long as we just have an additional water fountain for when children or families that need to go use the bathroom, there's a water fountain right there available. So whatever cost we can get to lower cost we can get, I'm all for that. So,
Mariana, how would you go about, or Brian, how would we go about acquiring those funds? Is there a
We
parkland
do have
development
$1 million budgeted for the park restrooms, so between the park restrooms and the subgrade. So I'd have to see how much more it was going to be, and then request for when I come back with the purchase order for more funds.
Is it possible for us to handle it with a motion on this item? Mr. Langley, you have a suggestion?
Yes, sir. We can find additional funds for that if you make a motion to include the additional funding for the, what are we calling it? The water fountains in these facilities, then we can include that.
So I would recommend a motion, but my preference would be to go for it all. I don't see any reason why, if we're going to run the line, we don't go ahead and put in the equipment. You want to go for it?
Before we amend, she had her hand up first.
Councilmember Flores.
Well, just in case, we just make it one amendment. So these are each going to have each park is going to have 2 restrooms? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Can we get more stalls in there? Because the only thing worse than no restroom is 1 for boys and 1 for girls. And just because that line is going to be, can you imagine what it's going to be like at Mary Kyle Hartson during Christmas? Is it even possible to do more stalls in the same area?
Mr. Garcia?
Yes, we actually have several different models. The next model up would offer 2 restrooms on the women's side, 2 toilets, and then a toilet and a urinal on the men's side. That's our 312 model. The current models are designed to handle 90 people per hour. The next level up is 180 people per hour. This two-room model is something that we see a lot in downtown areas. In fact, we're based out of Marble Falls, just about an hour and a half from you guys there. And downtown has exact models, the Mary Kyle Hartson building that, when they open the skating rink at winter time and whatnot. So.
He's on Florida, sorry.
It's a lot of use over there, but I've been there several times. It does handle the area really well. Oh, yes, we have several models that move on up.
So it seems that it's possible, we just have to find out how much more it would cost to get more stalls in the restrooms.
So maybe an idea would come back with the recommendations like what Councilmember Flores Kale had about adding 2 stalls to downtown, and then the cost for the additional water fountains for those parks, and then coming back with an amended
Yeah,
budget.
that's probably going to require it to come back, but Councilmember
I mean,
Heiser.
just something to look at like that.
Just a quick question. I'm looking in the designs, and ventilation in the bathrooms, I only see it just in that one picture. Oh, sorry, forgot about that. In the designs, there's only ventilation in this one picture in the bottom right. Do you have any sense of whether or not they'll be ventilated? Because I mean,
Yeah, Mr. Garcia did send a couple photos after the agenda was posted of more of the inside of the building. Mr. Garcia, do you want to expand a little bit more on the ventilation of the inside of the restroom?
Yeah, actually, we do have vents, large vents at the top of the gables on the front and backs of the buildings. The buildings actually stay really nice. I've got buildings all over Central Texas, out in Lakeway. I visit these buildings quite often, go into them during the summer months, and we do get a lot of compliments just because of the way the buildings are built. We do offer a little bit of airway underneath the doors, so that helps pull air up and draw it out the large vents at the top of the building. So the buildings do stay nice and cool, well, to the extent they can in, Central Texas heat. But I can say that they do have good airflow. Very few of our buildings are actually air conditioned. In fact, all the ones we have through Central Texas are all naturally ventilated like that. And we've had no complaints as far as heat goes or, excessive heat. And I do use them myself. It's something we take pride in, definitely having some good ventilation in there.
thank you.
Councilmember Zuniga.
Yes, so thank you for the presentation. I also had a quick question. Is there a cost differential between the Mary Kay Hart's design and the other designs? Just because I like the one with the beams and the little gable. It looks like it could add some shade as well. So my preference is that they all look like the Mary Kay Hart design, but I don't know if that's affordable. But is there a difference? Because some, they look a little more simpler compared to Mary Kay Hart's.
The Miracle Hartson park restroom does cost more than the other park restrooms. And so the porch was taken away from the other park restrooms so that we could stay within the $1 million budget.
How much different was each one?
Mr. Garcia was about 20% more? To add
You know that, I
porches
think
for
the
all the
formal
others.
quote, yeah, the formal quote that you have there should have each one, I believe. If not, I can look it up. I mean, let's see here. I'll tell you what. It was about a 15 to 20% difference, I believe.
Mhm.
And that's to have a porch and a water fountain at every restroom.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, and you know, we did a little bit of extra too on the Mary Kyle, adding that stone
Right.
and the hardy board and batten siding.
To give it the historic
that-
downtown feel.
Right.
Yeah, the brick, we added to that also to match the downtown area there.
What, can you come up with the money?
Yeah, well, I
mean,
think your,
I think we
I think
should-
your comments are exactly
We should go for the
right,
golden
so-
standard, right? I mean,
Yep.
this is city.
I don't
grown.
disagree with that.
Every
So-
park should look beautiful, right?
So why don't we have y'all come back with some options that include, if, you know, this is the 2-bathroom option everywhere, this is the 2-bathroom option everywhere with the Mary Kyle Hartson look. Give us a couple different options at the next meeting, and we'll just make a decision at that
Well,
point.
I just wanted to point out, this was competitively bid, so if the council's not interested in proceeding with this option, we could award it and do a change order if it's minor work. If it's completely redesigning it, we probably need to reject this and start over with a new design and rebid it,
So what is the procurement policy, 25%?
25%.
So I think we could stay within that.
I don't know.
It was very
Actually,
close, yeah.
oh, sorry, would it be all right to comment real quick?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Okay, so the first time we bid, we actually did all the buildings with the porches and the timber truss entries there and drinking fountains. We were within that 25%. This is actually probably going to be a little bit less than the 25%, adding those on there. So we could definitely come back with those numbers, just within, I could probably get them to you, early next week here.
Well, if you want to table the item, maybe we could table it and bring back some information to it and have you consider it the next agenda.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to postpone this item until the next regularly scheduled council meeting. Motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Parsley. Is there discussion on the motion?
That would really help because we already have something already in place. So if we come back with the recommendations like what Councilmember Flores Carroll about the 2 stalls and also stall in the urinal, and then also the water fountains for the park in general, and then also Zuniga's, the whole concept of the whole designs of making everything looking uniform on that end. Because I think it would just make it, maybe it ends up being 3 proposals. But just whatever it is, so that way, because once we build it, it's done.
Right,
And
exactly.
then we're just gonna have to live with it. But we want to make sure we have adequate water features for the children, also the additional stalls for crowds, especially if we're going to be doing a Lake Kyle, what happened last month with the big festival. We want to be able to have the additional facilities available.
Can we also make sure that we have like a partition in the urinals? So it's not just like, I don't know,
Yep.
if they knew, like, I don't want it to be wide open.
Oh, no.
Table 14 and
I
15.
just-
Yeah.
Is that bad? I'm just saying, I got a 10-year-old son.
That's a great idea.
Well, it's just a partition. It's like,
Bear,
wow.
just let it go. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. All right, is there further discussion? I want to say I agree with, basically with every addition. I think every proposal makes it better. And rather than trying to live within a budget that we've created, if the funding is there, let's get what we want.
Yep.
You know,
This was
that's
a
the
2020
mentality.
bond. This is what we push for.
Yeah, and if there's a shortfall, I'd love to see proposal on how we can come up with that difference without eating into other portions of the 2020 bond.
Yes, sir.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed. All right, motion carries 6-0. All right, next up is agenda item number 16, authorizing execution of a purchase order to Viking Construction, Inc., Georgetown, Texas, in an amount not to exceed $497,370.25, which includes a 12% contingency for the 2023 miscellaneous streets microsurfacing project. This award is authorized under the interlocal purchasing agreement with the city of Grand Prairie, Texas. Mr. Barba.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Leon Barba, City Engineer. Waiting for my presentation. This is our annual contract that we have with Viking Construction to do the microsurfacing on our streets. As the mayor mentioned, we have an interlocal with Grand Prairie, City of Grand Prairie, to do this. It gives us a better price and also keeps it, we don't have to go out to bids every time. So actually, there's only 2 contractors that do this kind of work in Texas. There's only one. There's one that's out of state. So there's only really 2 contractors that do this kind of work. Normally, the low bid is going to be from the Viking Construction.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Barba? Motion to approve? Sorry.
Second.
All right, motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Flores Cale. Is there discussion on the motion? Councilmember Flores Cale.
That was it. I was going to make a motion.
Oh, all right. This item was going to be on consent, but then it would have just been a one-item consent. Mayor Pro Tem.
Real quick, Daisy and Parkway, was there also maybe the idea after we do that we're looking at a section of Go Forth in front of Science Hall? Eventually.
The section in front of Science Hall is under construction with the Daisy Lane project right now.
Okay.
So they're going to do some more work in there, striping and move things around. So that's why we stayed away from that intersection.
Okay.
We just took it up to the entry road there.
All right.
Yeah,
So
that's why we left it off, because
Okay.
of the planned work that they have there in the future.
Well, I'm glad we're looking at Kyle Parkway because that's like in front of Walmart, in front of CVS, Walgreens and all that, especially when you got Lowe's. And that road is starting to get worn down a lot.
If you'll notice, I just want to make one comment. If you notice, there's a section that we're not going to be working on. It's between the private road that goes to Lowe's
Okay.
and back to I-35. That section, from what I understand, Public Works needs to work on some underground system there. They're having problems with it, so they didn't want us to do any kind of work in there. So that still needs some work.
Okay.
But that's, I'm coordinating that with Public Works.
Sounds good. Good.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Leon. 6-0. My apologies. Thank you. All right, next up, agenda item 17, a resolution authorizing the creation of a Citizen Academy program called Team Kyle Academy with an estimated $2,600 in annual support costs for the program. Ms. Saunier.
Hello, Council. Rachel Saunier for the record. So we are wanting to relaunch Team Kyle Academy for 2023. When I got into planning for it, though, I was notified that the budget from 2022 was directed by a previous city manager to not be carried over into 2023. So this is a budget request to essentially bring back a very similar program to what we did last year, but for this year, and to approve it in our budget. So just real quick about the program. Go to presenter mode real quick. Helps if. All right. So just a little background about Team Kyle Academy. It was created to be a connection for the community a connected community of informed citizens sharing the City of Kyle's passion for public service and engagement. We wanted it to foster public involvement with the city through education and inclusion in order to establish an open and trusting relationship while sharing the city's goals and the future. So essentially, it's a 7-week program aimed at informing residents about their community, creating more connected and public service-focused community here. Basically, it goes through every single department we have in Kyle, and a little extra. So things like Kyle Fire Department also get involved in it, things like that. And the citizens basically just learn all the ins and outs of city business, from economic development and planning and building and what all goes into that, to communications, emergency management, police, Kyle Fire Department, and how all those work, as well as things like hands-on work at Public Works and all of that. Essentially, the program, the way we have it set up right now, would run from August 7th through October 3rd, and they would meet Mondays from 6 to 8 p.m. here in council chambers, unless designated otherwise, somewhere like Public Works Training Facility, Kyle Public Library, or something like that, or a new Public Safety Center. Essentially, it'll be those 7 classes between that date, and then participants will also need to complete 3 field days. And field days can be any given city event, city-sponsored event, city-hosted event. We will provide a list of criteria for the selected few. The class would be limited to 24 participants, and dinner would be provided at each class. We are looking to have applications open between July 1st and 31st. It is a completely free program to participate in with no application fee, though we do ask people to apply, and those are the people that are selected. Participants can only miss 1 class or field day, and they will, if they have any more than that, then they would need to make up an absence. With some sort of approved event or activity, or by volunteering to graduate from the academy. The only requirements is that they are 18 years or older, have no current civil or criminal litigation with the City of Kyle or any of its employees or officials, and that they are not an elected official or running for office. We also ask that everyone sign a liability waiver, and all applicants are chosen on a first-come, first-served basis. Any applicants that are not chosen, though, we would put on a waiting list for the next year. This is a really basic schedule, what we've put together, what would be included in each date. August 7th would be orientation. We would just go over founders, history, overview of just kind of the overall city and its organization, and then also a meet and greet with all of our city leadership that council would be invited to as well. And then on August 14th, we would start off with finance, utility billing, and municipal court and HR, telling the participants what they do for the city and how their departments work. And then August 21st would be economic development, planning, building official, and Chamber of Commerce. And then on August 28th would be infrastructure-based, so CIP projects, which would involve public works, engineering, and our streets and transportation. And that one would be held at the Kyle Public Works Building. We would not have any class on Labor Day, as well as on September 11th, just to not coincide with any other events or memorials that people might be attending. And then on September 18th, they would pick back up with Public Safety. That would be one hosted by the Kyle Police Department at the new Public Safety Center. And Kyle Fire, EMS, if we can get them involved, and Emergency Management would all be a part of that one. September 25th would be beautification and quality of life. That would involve our wonderful Parks and Rec Department, Environmental Services and Trades, and Library and Communications, giving an overview of how they work for the city. And then the very last one would be October 3rd with the graduation at the first council meeting in October. This is a breakdown of everything we would need. We're estimating about $250 per week for food for 24 plus people, including the people that would be teaching the classes for each and given one. So that's about $1,750, and then $350 for supplies to supply things for field day, program packets, graduation certificates, clipboards, all that kind of good stuff. And then T-shirts. Each person that gets accepted into the program would get a T-shirt their size, that's Team Kyle Academy branded, to a total of $2,600. And that is the end of my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions y'all have.
Councilmember Heiser.
Thank you. Rachel, this is awesome. I'm so excited to see this. It's like a kayak for adults. And I think it's much needed. It's something I've been thinking a lot about. I've spent a lot of time looking at how our community engages with us in the city, and I'm finding more and more that there is a lack of information out there on how our local government actually functions and what we can and can't do here from the dais and what staff isn't able to do. And I just think it's a responsibility of ours and I think through this program is going to be immensely helpful to starting to help people during this time of exponential growth where things are happening so quickly that there's a better collective understanding of what is possible and where we can go with a lot of this opportunity that's coming here. Okay, enough of that. Question. A stipulation about not being able to run for, or not being, if you're running for office, you don't qualify. I'm curious to know why, and I also disagree with it, probably.
We are happy to amend these rules for
Okay.
council, but the reason that one was specifically put on there was we wanted participants that weren't people that are already participating. We want to reach the people that are not already running for office, that are not
Okay.
already super involved, that are not already on boards, commissions, or things like that. We want to reach the unreachables, so to speak.
Okay. I completely respect that. I would just say from my perspective, and, anyone else feel free to chime in, but, I did Citizens Police Academy, and I learned so much about how our police department functions internally, with council, with staff, with residents, and it's invaluable as I sit up here now. So if there were...
I will say, I think a program like this would be a great segue for anyone wanting to run for public office in the city of Kyle. We only put that on there because we really just wanted to make first priority, at least, those people that are not already actively super involved in the city.
I have my hand up.
Councilmember Parsley.
I'm going to kind of disagree and agree with Rachel. I think that this is a great program. I mean, as soon as I saw it, I thought, I want to join, I want to do it. I mean, I'm already involved, and I said, oh, I can't do it. But then again, I agree that nobody running for office should be applying just because, I mean, if you are already running, it's because you want to get involved. And it can be also used for political campaigns, so.
It's true.
I love the program, though.
Councilmember Flores Kell.
I'm going to disagree. I think it's a great opportunity for a candidate to run and then learn about it and then maybe be like, I'm not interested. These dates do not they don't go as far as the election. So this is October, it ends in October, and then maybe you can make that a stipulation like it's off season or whatever. But from my knowledge of this commission, I feel like this is a great opportunity for someone to learn. And I don't think we should limit those people to someone who may not be interested. I think that's kind of unfair. I think it's more to push people out there to get more involved. And if it goes from like, I'm running to, oh, this isn't what I thought, I think that's great too. I would like to see that. I don't want elected officials to be on there. I agree with that. For me, I don't even think we should limit it if you're in a civil litigation, because I don't think there's anything you can gain from that. You're not going to access any proprietary information. But as far as criminal litigation, I do understand that. So if it were up to me, I would allow people running for office, and I would probably take out the no current civil litigation. I don't think it's fair if someone's going to sue in a civil way to punish them and not allow them to.
I think that was added in by legal last year. I took the same rules that were applied to last year, the same criteria that we made applicants for last year, and applied them to this year.
This year, okay.
And I think that was a rollover. I wasn't involved with making the rules from last year, so that's the best I can find from my research.
Okay. I would like to make a motion to remove the not running for office. So it would just be just elected officials couldn't do it.
So no elected officials, but people running for office would.
Correct.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Flores Kell, seconded by Councilmember Heiser, that we remove the provision prohibiting candidates for local office from participating in the board. Is there discussion on the motion?
So,
Mayor Pro Tem.
so somebody note what we're saying is that if anybody who's decides to file for city council or mayor, that they are allowed a seat to take this class.
Yes.
So we're allowing them to take
As
that
long as the
seat.
class is in full. As long as they sign up in the appropriate amount of time.
Well, it's the same thing, you know, so it's saying that, okay, if you want to run for all, if I file or somebody files and then they get selected and then they'll have that seat, so they'll learn everything about finance, utility, municipal, economic planning, chamber infrastructure and everything like that.
Yes, that's my hope, at least.
Why not doing it before?
Huh?
Why not do it before?
I mean, you could if the dates were different.
But it's,
What, wait, I don't understand, I guess I don't understand your
She
question.
said, why not do that before you run? But I don't think anybody here did that. And we're just fine, in my opinion. So, again, I do not want to limit anybody from running for council. And I also don't want to limit anybody from this academy. I think it's silly.
But I think that we should give chance to the people who want to get involved and not have political aspirations.
So,
That is getting involved.
Okay, but not that you have, filed to run for city council or mayor position, and then that's why you want to do it. So if there's a resident who wants to learn about the process, then I think they need to have priority. That is just my opinion. I
Okay.
mean, there's a motion on the floor.
As a governing body, should want any person who wants to run for office to have
Absolutely.
access
All
to
right, well,
all
hey.
information
All right, I'm going to
possible.
call order to the table. We're just talking freely.
Oh, yeah.
There's plenty of opportunities for folks to have disagreements. I disagree. That's fine. I'm going to call the question.
Yeah,
So I need a second on that motion.
Second.
All right, question's been called and seconded. That's a non-debatable motion. So the first vote is to cease debate and call for a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
All right, motion carries 6-1.
yeah, my comment was just to clarify what.
Hang
what
on the
goes
debate. We just called the question. So the motion that is made was the motion to amend only, or is it to approve and amend? I'm sorry.
yeah, we could approve and amend. I think
Well, no,
I'm
you made a
appropriate
motion.
for this,
I
yeah.
need clarification on what.
So
what
my motion
vote
was
to
just
call.
to take out the running for office part.
Jennifer, is that right? Was it to amend,
Yes.
or was it to approve?
It was to remove people running from.
All right, so roll call vote.
Heiser?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Tobias?
Aye.
Parsley?
Nay.
Flores Kale?
Yes.
Mitchell?
Nay.
Bradshaw? Aye. Zuniga?
Yes.
All right, motion carries 5-2. Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Flores Kale. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 6-1. Next up, agenda item number 18, first reading an ordinance amending Chapter 53 zoning of the City of Kyle, Texas for the purpose of rezoning approximately .52 acres from agriculture to retail service district for property located at 1121 East FM 150 in Hays County, Texas. Planning and Zoning Commission voted 4-1 to recommend approval, and this item has a public hearing. Mr. Atkinson.
All right, thank you. Will Atkinson, Planning Director, for the record. Before you, we have a request to rezone the property at 1121 East FM 150 from agriculture to retail services zoning. Around it is ag primarily from the zoning perspective. And to the southeast, we have M3, which is a manufactured home park. With the requested zoning, the local node, or it's in the local node, excuse me, and the RS zoning is recommended conditionally. When, as y'all have heard before, when we recommend a zoning conditionally, it really has to do with infrastructure and the street network and stuff like that around it. From a use perspective, we don't really have a problem with it from a comprehensive plan. And within this local node as well, a local node is a smaller version from an area perspective than the regional node like you see down on Highway 21 in East FM 150. So this area is supposed to be redeveloping into more of a commercial area, especially along East FM 150. So staff doesn't really have a problem, and we absolutely support the rezoning for this section. For utilities, the water is County Line Special Utility District. Wastewater will be the existing septic system on site. They are coordinating with Hayes County. It is exceedingly far away from any existing wastewater that the city would provide. Power is PEC, and they will require a site development permit, a building permit, and also a conditional use permit, as they would need to be upgrading the landscaping and the parking as well.
All right.
Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Atkinson. This item has a public hearing. If there are no objections, I'm going to open the public hearing now. Seeing none, the public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and speak on this item? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Public hearing is now closed. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or motions? Councilman Florescale.
Can you tell me, or do you know why the one person voted no from P and Z?
Yes, I believe it was, I'm sorry?
No, I thought that question was coming. So.
Oh, yeah. It was Commissioner Chase, and they had a brief concern about the more expansive uses in the retail services zoning district versus something more similar to community commercial, which is more restrictive from a use perspective. The primary reason that staff recommended the retail services zoning district was to provide a zoning district that allows them to develop by right if they are to achieve the zoning. And the reason why community commercial was not chosen was because 70% of the parking has to be behind the front building face. And if you look at the site, there is no way you can get parking into the backyard. So if we're going to recommend a zoning district, we want to make it into a project that they can actually build.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 18.
Second, motion by Councilman Florescale, second by the mayor. Is there discussion on the motion? Councilman Parsley.
So if a mattress firm were to go in there, they can?
They could potentially. The reason why, if I may try to get ahead of your next question, I think might be the case. It is not a planned unit development for a specific reason, where we could, if it was, restrict uses. Our code requires planned unit developments to be in excess of 3 acres before we can consider them. This is a half-acre site. So, whereas we can't restrict the uses based on a straight zoning.
So what I don't want to hear is like, she's saying no to retail on the east side, because that's not what I want. But if you land up with a mattress firm, you do you.
Any further discussion? Councilman Zuniga.
Yes, I was a bit perplexed about the septic system. Is that because the dwelling that's there is an older dwelling, so there's already a septic system on the site? And the second question is, why did you say that they're far away from our wastewater connectivity lines when the wastewater runs directly down 150 into Waterleaf? So why would that not be an upgraded developer request? That I guess that we start shifting from septic systems into wastewater.
Understood. So the site is in its existing form a single-family house, which is on septic from years before the city had a wastewater treatment plant in Waterleaf. And so we have, and I don't remember the exact linear footage, but we have a minimum distance. If you exceed that from any existing wastewater lines, you are not required by the city statute to tie into it. And it's stuff like this for smaller businesses, for one-off single-family homes, that the cost to actually extend a wastewater line all the way down is enormously expensive. And so, to be fair to them from a cost perspective, that's why they're doing it. The closest wastewater line is actually, I believe, over at New Country Road at the first intersection inside, and it's a significant distance away.
Okay.
So, and they are coordinating with Hayes County to make sure that they can utilize the septic system as well.
Sorry, I came up with another question. So is this the lot with the dwelling and then the lot behind it? Did it all get combined together after all? Or are there still two different boundaries there?
This is the lot with the yellow house on it. If you're going west,
I see.
to the right, and I can throw it up on the screen.
Because I know there was a lot right behind it that's also zoned retail?
So the lot outlined in red is the request before you. It is the single-family house that's there, and they're going to convert it into a retail-based business. The lot behind it is zoned ag.
Okay.
But the lot, there's a driveway between this lot and then the lot to the west, which is community commercial.
Is the one behind it, could you consider it a flagged lot? Like a lot that doesn't have a main entrance? I guess it has to go through another property.
It has a
Right.
main entrance. It has public street access, a lot behind it.
Okay, it does have public access, no?
I think those types of configurations are illegal now.
Right.
Yeah, we would have to take a look at that if they ever chose to develop.
Thank you, Will.
Councilmember Flores.
Does that development to the right, are they all septic?
The manufactured home park,
Yes.
they are on a private wastewater system that has all their sewer tying in from each home down to our public access point down at the creek, which is a fairly significant way to the north.
Okay. Is that house going to stay there?
Probably so. With our discussions with the applicant, the owner, they're wanting to convert the home, and it's going to have to be brought up to ADA compliance and what have you as well to make sure that everybody from the public can utilize the facility.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 6-1.
No to retail on the east.
Next up, agenda item number,
This was
hang on. Agenda item 19, first reading, an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Kyle, Texas, amending Chapter 54, landscape and screening requirements of the City of Kyle, Texas, authorizing the city secretary to amend Ordinance 912 of the City of Kyle so as to reflect this change. This item has a public hearing. Planning and zoning voted 5-0 to approve with amendments outlined in the staff memo. Mr. Atkinson. Oh, Mr. Lutz.
Yes, Jason Lutz, Senior Planner. Good evening, Mayor, Commission, Council members. Let me pull up my PowerPoint presentation real quick. So tonight we're looking at a proposed amendments to Chapter 54. This is our landscaping and screening ordinance. This ordinance was requested by Council probably a little over 7 months ago, with the goal to reduce our water usage within the city as far as landscaping requirements goes. I did provide a spreadsheet that shows a detailed list of changes with some reasoning, and then it was updated to include P&Z's recommendations so that you have that as well. Again, major changes are focused on the following issues. Most of these are going to cover allowances for artificial plants and grass. It would allow commercial projects to use more xeriscaping. It does remove the allowances to utilize vegetation as required screening, again, trying to remove high water intense uses, and then provides an incentive to install rainwater collection systems within the proposed or existing developments. I do want to go over some of P&Z's recommendations. There were several, and so there are quite a bit of changes. So if you have any questions, we can touch on those as we're done. This section 54.3, maintenance, they wanted to add language to make sure that any artificial plants or turf would be allowed, make sure that the address would address fading, color, maintenance, just look, feel. They wanted to strengthen and tighten up that language. As well as it added some rainwater collection system language for maintenance as well. Keeping with the maintenance section, subsection C, they wanted to make sure the rainwater system that was installed would be done with some other type of incentive. They were not comfortable with increasing parking as an incentive. So their recommendation was not reduce impervious cover or add more parking as an incentive for that. Section 54.4, planning criteria. This was a kind of a minor change. They want to keep the current language of used and not utilize the term authorized. But they did not want to allow artificial turf in some of their developments. They were okay with small portions or artificial plants, but they were not comfortable with the allowance of turf. Screening, this was something we did add. Again, this section B2D specifically discusses around sensitive facilities, so lift stations, water towers, things of that nature. That had come up through some of our staff discussions, so we thought we would put that in there as we had this section open. It would also include new developments along major thoroughfares. There been some concerns that we've discussed regarding fencing, sound, noise along those transportation corridors. So, however, they wanted to make sure that we would allow existing homeowners who had maybe wood fences that they could replace with like materials. So they recommended adding some language there. Section 5411, they wanted to keep the current language. They did not want to delete that subsection. This was the section that said you could screen your property through existing native vegetation. So if there is an existing stalk of trees, the current code allows that to cover your screening for the site. Staff was recommending a removal of that, but they want to keep that allotment. It does give the Director of Development Services a little bit of leeway to disprove those, so staff is comfortable with that. So I know there's a lot of changes in there. I'll be glad to answer those as you have, if you have any questions or need any clarification at this time.
Does anybody have any questions regarding this item? Councilmember Parsley.
I don't have any questions. I'm just so excited to see this. Like, I feel like most of us here have probably pushed for something that, changes that will help to maintain or, help with the water levels and the usage of water. I think all of us in different occasions have reached out to, Will or Jerry to talk about this. So I am really happy to see this. Thank you.
What was the conversation around removing the artificial turf?
Yeah.
It had most to do with maintenance. They were concerned the look of that, whatever material they were using. Currently, there's a lot of different products out there for artificial turf. Some are better than others. Staff put that in there because it is a viable use, especially in high traffic areas. So whether that's kind of dog park areas, common public places, places that maybe get a lot of shade because of high buildings or density, they don't get the sun. So that was their big concern, was the maintenance and how that would look over the life
So
of the project.
I think that artificial turf definitely has those risks of starting to look bad over time, and then also there's impervious coverage issues with regards to stormwater. That said, it is a very viable, like if you look at Mary Kyle Hartson City Square Park, it is a great combination of a lot of different uses, different styles of, part natural grass, part concrete, part artificial turf. So I would like to see us encourage something similar to that particular style, like what we see at Mary Kyle Hartson Park, or like you say, in high use areas where the grass can get worn out, or so is there a way for us to address the concerns that you have regarding maintenance and also address the potential for inferior products to be installed, so that we're still encouraging limited amounts of artificial turf in certain areas that have to be installed to a particular standard? Can we do that and still encourage it?
Your council, y'all can do what you'd like. So staff can provide language. We can strengthen or beefing up the language on maintenance. We can put some language in there on fading, good working order, making sure that it's installed properly. But if you don't have that allowance in there, then we don't need to bring that language in. So
Yeah.
I do want to point out that this is for required landscaping areas. So if you agree with P&Z and you don't want the turf, that you kind of specify for all areas. If you don't agree with P&Z and you want to make some changes, then just give staff some specificity on where those areas are. If it's just in the required landscaping section, if you're okay with it being in other parts, but maybe not more than a certain total percentage, we can come back with some options.
Yeah. So this is first reading. So if council's generally open to the idea of exploring it more, my suggestion would be to pass this on first reading and then direct staff to bring back some research and robust options, considering the feedback the conversation that we're having. Is that something y'all are open to that way? Because we're not going to be able to hammer that out right at this very moment. Councilmember Florescale.
I agree. I would like some research, because I am heavily leaning towards no artificial grass. Councilmember Parsley knows why, but I'm not a fan of the way, of just the use of it. You know, I know you can wash it out, but when you have pets that use the restroom there or somebody throws up in there, it's just going to be a lot harder to clean. And so for that reason, I'd rather, for hypogenic clean reasons, I'd rather not see that in a lot of developments. I think it does work at Mary Kyle Hartson, but to make it a requirement, I think is a different ask. So
Allowed is the key word there. So
Right, and I believe we limited that allowance to 10% of your required landscape screening, so.
and they removed that.
Well, they recommended removal of any allotment for turf, so if council agrees with that, we would update the ordinance and the draft to follow suit.
Will we consider
10%.
to have any incentives, you know, the more they use turf or artificial grass? It looks prettier, and if they're gonna use it for common areas where maybe pets are not gonna be using it for, you know, doing business purposes, I just think it looks nice.
It's a trade-off. There are benefits to it and there are detriments to it. But if your proposal was to allow up to 10% at a maximum, that seems fairly reasonable to me. But
And I would say that's 10% of the required, so if your site is required to have, say, 15% landscaping, only 10% of that can be artificial.
1.5%.
Yes, sir.
Right. Well, can you look at that? Look and maybe see what some other cities have done with regards to addressing some of the maintenance issues, the installation issues, impervious coverage considerations, and just give us a little bit of feedback on that particular item, just because I think we all have interest in various capacities there to try to drill down
Yes,
on
sir.
that.
We can also bring back some examples if you'd like to see some developments in the area that are utilizing those. We can provide some photos for your review.
The
also.
last conversation I remember was the rail house. That was many years ago now, but they wanted to put in artificial turf in certain areas, and the code didn't allow for it, and I believe we had to give them a variance to put that in certain spots, and it is very, very helpful there, as opposed to if it was just grass that gets worn out, or if it's raining and it's wet and people are getting, tracked up. So there are places where it could be appropriate. Councilmember Zuniga,
Yeah, so can I ask Tracy to say something?
if you'd like to call her up.
Can you come up and explain the artificial turf situation with Waterleaf?
Tracy Shield, President for Waterleaf Falls HOA in this capacity. Yes, at our past board meeting, we just approved to put in artificial turf in an area of our park because of the grass, the trees has created so much shade that grass will not grow. And so we end up with mud.
Right.
And of course, we thought about mulch, we thought about rock and everything else, but kids and mulch and rocks probably don't match too well sometimes. So we are going to be installing artificial grass or artificial turf in the next couple of months. And we're gonna see how that works for us. So if you wanna use us as a test site, you can, but it's gonna be a portion of our park.
So how are you able to do that if our code does not allow for it?
That's what I was, saying. Wait a minute, because
Jason, does our current code allow for it? I didn't think it did.
Our current code allows for alternative materials to be considered in certain circumstances, so I'm not sure if.
You talking about the variance process? So they would have to.
It's actually a staff process. There's some criteria on when it can and can't be considered. It's very similar to a variance. There needs to be either some type of issue with the lot or location or drainage or something like that, so.
So if we pass the ordinance as amended by the Planning and Zoning Commission, would that eliminate your ability to look at individual requests for artificial turf?
I don't believe so. The section that we really added this in was specifically for the required landscaping, just so we can kind of strengthen that up. There's another section of code that just speaks to alternative grass. It doesn't really call out artificial turf, but it uses the term turf, so.
Well, but hang on, if the code says that in the required landscaping, artificial turf is not allowed, how could they then go to staff and have you look within their required landscaping to install artificial turf?
There's a subsection that it's kind of weird. It speaks to alternative materials, so it doesn't really speak to turf itself. Staff could take a very liberal interpretation of that and consider all materials, or they could take a very strict interpretation and say, no, this subsection above it here would outweigh this section here.
I find that perplexing, but okay.
I know it's not the best answer, but that's kind of where the code's at. We've learned a little bit more about turf in the last several weeks as we've had these conversations come up. So, and I'm not familiar with your project, so I couldn't answer how that was approved or not.
Well, but I guess typically if you are trying to do something other, and I'm sorry to harp on this, but it's a kind of a serious issue. Like typically if you're applying for a landscaping permit as a part of a development project, you have to follow the landscaping ordinance that we passed. You have to read the rules and you have to follow it. If you want to do something other than what the rules say, in this case, it would be that artificial turf is not allowed. If we adopted the proposed amendments, you have to apply for a variance in order to go around that. That is the exact channel. So I'm trying to understand, because what I'm hearing you say is that technically, if staff says, actually, it's fine, then it can just be fine?
Yes, so the first section that we talked about was required landscaping. So this is the areas that the code says, hey, you're doing X amount of square foot, you have to plant this much impervious cover and greenery. The subsection she's under is just an exception section, and it has an alternative path. It does not mention Board of Adjustments or variances.
But you're applying you're applying the vague language to the required landscaping. So if in the required landscaping, someone wanted to put in a prohibited item, you could still, you're saying staff could still just say yes to that?
Yes, under the current code, yes.
All right.
So if we get direction from council to modify and prohibit it all, then we would clean up the language to make sure that they match. If council has direction that we allow them, then we would clean up that language to match as well.
Okay, I don't really know where to go from there. Councilor Forsko.
No, I'm perplexed. I kind of get what Mayor Mitchell is saying. Like, there's no need for a variance at all if staff has the ability just to say yes or no. So I guess, anyway, I was gonna approve this. I don't know. I was gonna make a motion to approve, but I think there's a lot of questions left.
I think the biggest one for staff that we'd need to answer is whether council would like to use turf or not. If the answer is yes, then we can clean this up, make it match. If the answer is no, then we bring that back as well. But we do need a little bit of direction on this
So if we
issue.
say yes, but a percentage, does that work?
What exactly are the negative, like the impacts of using turf?
I don't want to, negative impact kind of depends on the person looking at it. Some people may say it's unsightly, it's not natural, it doesn't look right. Maybe it doesn't fit in on the one house in an entire street that has grass, and everybody else has grass and they have turf. But there are benefits to having it. The negative issue with it is some of them can have a high impervious cover. So you have to calculate that into your site development. There may be some more stormwater runoff. The positives are it's easier to clean. It stays green year round. I guess that could also be considered a negative because in fall when everyone's yard is brown, this one will be green. So I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces on turf.
I disagree with not allowing turf. I think turf needs to be allowed for people to use. I mean, if I could afford it, my whole house would be fake grass. So it would look green all the time.
So but just FYI, before we make motions, I don't think I ever did the public hearing on this one. I'm not 100% sure, but just FYI. But Mr. Langley, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, from a staff perspective, we'd recommend that you have options to allow it. And I've seen many examples in other cities where it's been done really well. In fact, my prior city, we had our entire plaza done in turf for the exact reasons that Jason was talking about. lots of traffic, could be used year-round, didn't have any kind of issues when it got wet. It's very attractive and looked really, really nice. But there are variations of the product, of what's a good quality product and what's not. So we can bring you some examples and have more discussion.
But
at
can
a
we
future
actually
meeting.
put the examples of the good product in the landscaping
Yes,
ordinance
sir.
to require that if you want the artificial turf, that it has to be this type or greater?
I think we can come up with something like that. I'm kind of thinking of the old artificial turf, which was almost like carpet that you put down. This is really more like a natural grass-looking surface. I'm not sure how to describe it, but I think we can find a way to.
Just
put
what we
something-
did at Mary Kyle Hartson, because that stuff's awesome.
Right. Looks more
Councilman Zuniga.
Natural.
Yes. So yes, 'cause I'm also had a lot of confusion. So just to get clarity, if a homeowner decides their St. Augustine is too hard to keep replacing, are they out of compliance? Have they created a vigilante action by replacing their grass with artificial turf by city code? Would they be fined?
At this point, they would not. So the current code does not allow it under the required landscaping. There is an exemption section. And so if someone installed it on their house, say 100% of their yard, but they would be in compliance, they would be in violation if they did not get a permit for us. And so one of the two things that we would look at is, one, are there any extenuating circumstances that we would support this type of use? But the second, most importantly, has there been a study on the impervious cover calculations? So single-family homes have to have, they're limited on their impervious cover. If they were to use a certain material, some of these may be in themselves only 50% pervious. Some of them may be only 10% pervious. So we would have to run that through. They would have to submit their engineering. We'd have to review it through the building permit side. So
A permit is required to do it?
yes, we would have to look, we would need a permit. Right now, we do not have a sod permit as part of our building side. But if that question comes up, we would have to process that through, because we would have to verify the impervious cover calculations for the lot.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no objections, we do have a public hearing for this item. Seeing none, I'm going to open the public hearing. Public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and speak? Go ahead. State your name for the record. We don't know who you are.
Tracy Shield. Again, Waterleaf Falls HOA, we researched this quite a bit, because we really looked into how to create a safe environment for our residents and still have our park look nice. And we actually had several examples of artificial turf brought in, and we looked at it, and it looks really good. I mean, there's quite a bit of drainage underneath, and even to prep the site for the turf, you just don't lay it over grass and be gone with it. You actually have to prep the site for it. And so the drainage is actually very good for it. And so I think, once we find out those calculations, I think that will help out tremendously. So that's it. But I hope.
So I'd like to take a stab at a motion. I'd like to make a motion. I'm sorry, is there anyone else who wishes to come forward? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Public hearing is now closed. I'm getting loopy. All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 19 and accept the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommended amendments, except for the landscaping amendment, and to direct staff to further research the clause related to not the landscaping amendment, the artificial turf amendment, and to direct staff to do research on the artificial turf clause and bring back some suggestions related to how we can strengthen that to ensure that artificial turf is installed in a productive and positive way.
Second.
All right, motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Flores-Cale. Is there discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed. All right, motion carries 7-0. I am going to object to it being finally passed so that we can have it come back for second reading. All right, next
Thank
up
you,
is
Counsel.
agenda item number 20. Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Kyle, Texas, amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Administration, amending Article 3, Boards, Committees, and Commissions, et cetera. This is the item that we approved at the last meeting regarding the cleaning up the policies to be more compliant. There may be discussion regarding the Economic Development Board. Is that a discussion we want to have now, or do we want to go ahead and proceed with second reading here and have the economic development discussion at a later date? Councilor Heiser.
I would like to propose that we have that discussion this weekend under the supervision of Mr. Langley here at the Vision Workshop in terms of the direction
Okay.
and the purpose and the requirements for our Economic Development Department.
I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 20. Motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Flores Kell. Is there discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 6-0. All right, next up is agenda item number 21. This item was postponed on May 16th. Discussion of possible action to increase the minimum distance for child safety zone ordinance. Councilmember Parsley.
Thank you. I'm glad that it's back and it has a lot of good information as backup material. So thank you so much to Officer Peets for putting that together. There is a memorandum on the backup material that basically explains why we should be looking into expanding that minimum requirement for sex offenders. Number one, this will be for sex offenders that have crimes with children. As we know, we are such a growing city, probably the fastest growing in the country. And I would like for you guys to open the backup material and see the number of sex offenders that we have had in the city of Kyle since 2020 and how it has decreased. Then you can go down and see that cities that have increased population, like Cedar Park, it's a great example. Pflugerville is another one. They have, Cedar Park has about 90,000 residents and only 28 sex offenders. Here we are with about half of that population and twice as many. So given those numbers and knowing that we keep developing and people keep moving to Kyle, I would like to advocate for children and would like to explore a proposal to increase the minimum requirement, the minimum distance to 1,500 to 2,000 feet. So if I make a motion and we can have that discussion, so I would like to make a motion. Actually, I'm going to go because I'm not advocating for sex offenders. I would like to make a motion to approve an increase on the minimum requirement for the child safety zone ordinance from 1,000 to 2,000 feet.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Parsley, seconded by Councilmember Flores Kell, that we increase the minimum distance for the child safety zone ordinance from 1,000 to 2,000 feet. Is there discussion on the motion?
I do want to have something to say. I know, Peach, we discussed previously, we had maps where it would show how it would look with 1,500 to 2,000. Was it 2,000 something that will, no, I'm just thinking about it, was not put us in compliance?
When y'all considered this before, it's been several years that since you've considered this, you had maps that showed you the different distances and the effect of that on kind of areas where people could reside and what areas of the city they covered. The city has changed since that time, and so relying on those past maps probably wouldn't give you an accurate idea of whether the distance is going to achieve the goal of the the council related to this expansion, so.
That's not the question she asked. She wanted to know whether or not increasing it to 2,000 feet would create a potential constitutional liability for the city.
We can't know that without reviewing what the impact of the 2,000-foot does to the city and to
Okay.
the areas to reside. So we'd need to revisit those maps.
So I know that the maps were given to us on the last, and I don't know, and let me review, make sure that they are in the backup material for this time. Because what I would like to have is more restrictions for sex offenders to move to Kyle. So if 2,000 will keep away as many, as we can, then I would like to go for that. As you read on the memorandum, some will be grandfathered if they have lived in here already. But we're talking about people who will be moving in and they're brand new to Kyle. They can go and move somewhere else. That will be my goal.
Like Shadow Creek, Crosswinds, send them out there.
I don't know. Not in
We don't
Kyle.
care about those folks.
So can I ask?
Councilmember Flores, yeah.
Thank you. What
Oh,
is
here
the
we go. It's in the
legality
backup.
issue? Because Cibolo has 35,000 people for their population, and they have the 2,000 feet. And there's another one, what is that? Well, Pflugerville is 70,000 and it's 2,000 feet. So what would be the legal problem that we would face if we increased it to 2,000?
And then the backup material does have the map, sorry.
Okay.
I looked, yeah. Okay.
When these get challenged, the challenge comes is addressing the council's authority to enact these types of regulations, but also the issue is related to rights to reside, have certain rights of having a right to reside in certain areas to make choices about where you live. So those are the constitutional challenges that are brought, and with the courts, how the courts look at those challenges is what is the goal that the council is trying to achieve, and is your regulation tailored to fit that specific goal, and does it go beyond that?
Okay, so just showing that our numbers have gone down since we've had this ordinance, that would probably benefit the city, I would like to think. I guess if we were trying to keep sex offenders out and the numbers kept rising, that would be contradictory to what we were doing.
What I'm thinking is the more we grow, the more we're developing, the more we are annexing, the more sex offenders we're opening doors to. If you see the map that has the 2,000, there's still places for them to leave. And again, I'm not here to advocate for them. So if 2,000 can bring the number down, the 49 that we currently have will be grandfathered. What I would like to see is for those numbers to probably start going down as they may or may not move away, and then preventing that new ones come over.
Councilmember Heiser.
Under this proposed change, would, you mentioned grandfathered in people who already live here. Let's say that they wanted to move. Within or if they needed to move or something along those lines within a general area, like within they have kids in a certain school district or something like that.
Nope.
If
the landlord told them that their lease is up, instead of getting another house across the street, they would be forced to leave.
That's okay.
They'd be forced to leave that house either way. They would just have to find a place in Kyle.
Outside of
So,
Kyle.
I mean, well, I looked at the
There's
map,
still
and there's still
places.
areas, trust me, because they're on the east side. So even with the 2,000 foot, you're still going to get availability in Kyle. And the reason why I really support this is because even with 1,500 feet, Quail Ridge is completely available. And I would like to not see that. I'd like to get it tight, and I'd like to fix up the whole city. And again, it's not the city's responsibility to say if somebody was guilty or not. It's our responsibility to only deal with the protection of our residents. And so I do understand that there are people who may have been innocent that were found to be guilty, but that's not for the city to decide. That is for the courts to decide. And looking at these numbers, it looks like the majority of the victims, it says the age and gender of the 45 victims, the majority are 13, 14, 15-year-old. They're not super young, and they're not old. They're not like right at 17 where there's that teetering age, but these are middle-aged, girls. And so I feel an obligation to try to do my best to protect those kids.
And those are kids that are probably walking back and forth from school. So they're in an age that they can do that.
Oh, I want to debate this so bad. There's a motion and a second. Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, let's look at the real issue here. I hear a lot of, there's specific types of individuals we don't want to live in our city. But that's going to happen no matter what. And you just need to understand that. I understand the protection of the city. I understand the protection of families and children and so forth. And you are right. It is not council's obligation to judge these individuals who were found or who have been convicted of these crimes. That was placed upon the judge and the jury and the courts. So I think the whole thing here is what you're saying is you want to increase it from 1,000 to 2,000 to where premises where children commonly gather, such as parks and schools. Because it seems like what I'm hearing is we don't want these individuals in our city, period. I'm all about safety and security for our city. I'm all for safety and security for our residents. But I also know that there are people out there that have civil rights. And you've got to understand that as well. Feelings aside, the facts is these people do have civil rights. So, if you don't mind, I'd like to call up Officer Pates to just get some clarification on the numbers and to hear from him on this issue, because it is very sensitive and it is very serious. And so I wanted to get some of your feedback, sir, on the numbers itself.
Yes, sir. How's it going, Counsel? Dago Pates, Cal PD.
So from the number of 2020, we've had 75 individual sex offenders that lived in our city, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now we've dropped it down to 49.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Has there been any problem that you know of when it comes to registering or following through on the yearly registration on any of these individuals?
Some of them, they fail to stay in compliance, yeah.
Okay. They stay, okay. And what?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And so with that number there, we have seen a decrease in these individuals moving to our city within the premises of nearby schools and so forth. Then you said that some of them have been in compliance on that end. So how do you feel? I mean, it's just not, but as far as when it comes to increasing from 1,000 to 2,000, have you seen in your experience in other cities that you might know of has helped deter a lot of these individuals living from these types of areas?
Absolutely. And I just want to make sure that the council is clear. This doesn't affect every sex offender at all. Any sex offender, if their victim is 17 and older, they can move wherever they want across the street. This is only affecting sex offenders whose victims were younger than 17. And so in other cities that have this, they've had tremendous success with deterring, offenders moving close once they even hear the ordinance that, oh, you have one, I'll look elsewhere.
To me, that's gold standard. To me, having a city that has a 60,000 population with a third of the sex offenders we have right now, it's gold standard. So if Pflugerville is doing it, if Cedar Park is doing it, then Kyle should be doing this. We are growing so fast. Why do we need to accommodate to bring sex offenders to our city that we love. I'm not, and then what he's saying, what Officer Peets is saying is this is not going to affect every sex offender, which I wish it could. It's targeting people that have done criminal things to children. So I don't even see why this should be a discussion. I mean, we all should be advocating for kids.
Mm-hmm. And we are. We're just getting the facts out there, Ms. Parsley. We're just getting the facts out there. And like I said, I'm not in disagreement with you. You need to understand that. I'm not in disagreement with you. I just want to make sure that we get our facts straight on the numbers and so forth. And if it seems like we are specifically targeting in just as that end, we just have to be clear on what our stance is. Are we growing? Of course we are. Do we want to protect our children? Of course we do. I want to protect everybody because it's just not children. Okay, but at the same time, we also want to make sure that we go forward with this. We make sure we have our numbers, and we needed to hear from Kyle Police the numbers. That is why, respectfully, I had him come up here to let us know about these things.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Zuniga.
Yes, thank you, Officer Pates. Just to get more on the data analysis, because when I'm looking at this, we're drawing a correlation between the time that we implemented the zone, the safe zone, and then this decrease in sex offenders that we know of. Could there be other circumstances where these sex offenders, maybe they self-moved, not because of this zone, but maybe they relocated on their own, they had a different job or whatever. So I'm just a little bit skeptical on, because we don't have a control study where we can look at, does a smaller boundary show the opposite trend? So I just want to make sure that if we do, because I'm all for let's keep everyone
Absolutely,
safe,
yes, sir.
but how do we know the boundary
so
really
none
is
of these-
effective and that it's really effective in the relationship of the larger the boundary, that the sex offenders are gone?
Okay, I'm going to try to answer that. That was a long question.
All right.
So with the ordinance, none of these numbers from decreasing have been directly saying, oh, hey, you live here now and you have to move out. No, at no point in time has that ever happened. With these numbers decreasing, these offenders that have moved away, family, work, whatever, it wasn't the city or the police department saying, okay, you have to move. Not once has that ever happened. I just want to make sure that's clear. What was the second part of your question?
The other one is you said some of them are in violation. I guess they don't know about the safe zone.
No, they're not in violation directly with it. They'd be in violation for failing to register, again, due to their annual registration, not necessarily because of this directly.
Right.
That's with the registration for the state.
And not to get into legal issues, but is there a lot of recidivity where they repeat again the crime on a minor?
I can't answer that one. I don't know. That one is.
Okay. Thank you, officer.
Yes, sir. Sorry about that one.
All right, so I'm just going to do a couple questions.
Yes,
just
sir.
to make it clear on my stance on this. So first is that I supported the original proposal for 1,000 feet.
Yes, sir.
There was debate about 1,000 versus 2,000. The reason that 2,000 was not selected at that time is because of the map that was just shown, which virtually eliminates sex offenders from coming to COB, which has been stated multiple times from multiple council members is the goal. The word has been target, to eliminate them from the city of Kyle because they represent a threat to our children. The question is, what happens to the subdivisions just outside of the city of Kyle when we eliminate the ability of registered lawful sex offenders who've been convicted, gone through a process, and are allowed by rights to live among the public? What happens to the subdivisions just outside of Kyle? Do you think that the registered sex offenders per capita in those subdivisions goes up or down based on council action if we eliminate sex offenders from being able to live in the city? What would you think? Up or down? Someone has a job, they got to live somewhere, right?
Yeah, they
So
have
it
to live
probably
somewhere.
goes-
It could go up.
It could go up, right?
Or they could find different areas in this region.
In unincorporated Hayes County, let's say, someone's going to live in the county outside of the city of Kyle. The registered sex offenders per capita goes up, not down. Therefore, if the logic is that by saying that registered sex offenders represent a threat and are a danger to the people they live around, are we, by taking this vote, by saying they cannot live anywhere in the city of Kyle virtually, they must live in unincorporated Hayes County, is our vote having a consequence of making this neighborhoods and locations where people can live outside of the city of Kyle more dangerous, because those folks must now move. They have to live somewhere. They must move outside of our city and go live in unincorporated Hayes County.
Their representatives will take care of them. This is our job as representing the city of Kyle to take care of our children. So whoever represents the county or the adjacent areas should be doing revisions on their ordinance. That's the way we see it. I'm not here, we're not here to care for what happens on the other subdivisions outside our city. And they are not, it's not that we are eliminating them from living in the city of Kyle. There are
see the map?
There are pockets. I see the pockets, they're in blue.
How would you feel if that pocket is where you lived, and that is now the only place in the city of Kyle that a registered sex offender?
If I mess-
Are we making that pocket less safe or more safe?
If I messed up and that's where I have to live, that's where I have to live.
I see what he's saying. He's
Point
trying to
is about
ask,
our
yeah.
residents, though. He's not making the point from the perspective of a sex offender. He's asking how are the people in the community in Kyle, who's living right across from one of those areas, in unincorporated areas, how are our Kyle residents going to feel if across the street is a cluster of sex offenders, because it's the
Remember.
closest area they could live?
What we are increasing is the radio from the distance from parks or schools. That's all we are doing.
That
In my
that is
mind-
not what you are doing.
Yes, it is
You are
what we're
taking the
doing.
total square footage, number of units, dwelling units in the city of Kyle that are where a registered sex offender could possibly live, and you are reducing it by about 95%.
And that is
That's
fine.
what you're doing.
That will give us peace of mind that a 14-year-old can walk back and forth from school without having a sex offender be as close as he could possibly be.
Does this impact ETJ? Sorry, Bert, Kyle.
Yeah, question, Officer Pates, a couple of different questions here. And well, actually, I'm going to start off with a statement, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. Based on the numbers, it looks like as our population has increased, the number of sex offenders has decreased. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Which is good, which is the point of making the ordinance 1,000 feet, I'm guessing. Let's 22 and 23, 59 registered sex offenders lived in Kyle in 22 and 49 in 23. Do we have any idea of how many of those offenders committed crimes, like, recently? Do we have any sense? I mean, could this be 49 people who committed a crime 15 years ago?
Are you asking, like, out of the 49,
Well,
how many
I know, I'm
recent?
not expecting you, I just was wondering, like, I'm trying to, like, it's like one of the few issues in life where there is, having a nuanced conversation is nearly impossible, because it's either you're pro-sex offender or against it. What I am against in this situation is I look at the numbers and I see a problem decreasing as our population is increasing, which is the desired result of issuing an ordinance 2 years or 3 years ago to change the distance. But it kind of feels like if these numbers are right, we're just using the power of government to further to solve for a problem that we've already solved. It seems like we've already solved.
Well, I know some of the subdivisions have gotten bigger, and with that bigger expansion of certain subdivisions, there hasn't been additional parks or areas for kids to commonly gather, but kids are definitely walking further now in these subdivisions to get to their homes where there wasn't homes before, and now, you know, more, or at least one sex offender has moved into one of these subdivisions, which is fine, because he's outside of the range, you know, no issues, but there's definitely going to be a lot more foot traffic from children going further past.
Do we know how many people this would affect?
As of right now,
Yeah, just out of curiosity.
as like sex
Yeah,
offenders
if you
it'll
go from
affect?
1,000 to 2,000 feet, just curious.
Well, it won't affect anybody that's already here, so.
It would only
Okay, so
affect
you're
people that
saying
want to
Point of
come
the
to
ordinance
Kyle.
is to affect people who are currently, that's the
this-
excuse that gets used in order to eliminate the ability of sex offenders
Yeah.
moving forward.
It's just, yeah. Like, I don't know.
All right, there's a motion on the
honestly have
table.
no idea.
There's a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. All right, motion carries 5-2. All right, we have executive session still. We have one final item. What's that? Y'all want to talk about it at the next time?
Yes, sir. We'll bring it back at another time. It's not pressing.
All right, motion to adjourn.
It's starting to get better.